Chapter 2660. The appearance of these figures immediately caused Wu Lu and Gong Ji's expressions to abruptly change. Even though they were supreme experts who stood at the peak of a continent, their expressions became extremely solemn at this moment. Jianchen, who was about to summon the martial Soul Mountain, was also stunned by the sudden appearance of these figures. The light in his eyes flickered as he stared at the figures with their backs towards him. He was rather surprised and hesitated slightly. He was in no hurry to summon the martial Soul Mountain. Righteous Alliance, aye, you've crossed the line. Aye, this is the territory of our Four Symbols Alliance. Gong Ji, who originally stood behind the young Star Lord, took a step forward. Her hunched figure radiated with a surging presence as she bellowed out with her old, hoarse voice. Righteous Alliance, are you going back on your word? Are you going to break the peace agreement you signed with us in the past? Wu Lu and Gong Ji stood side by side as they glared at the people before them with sunken faces. A total of 7 figures hovered before Wu Lu and Gong Ji. They all possessed different appearances and ages. They were the Lord of the Heavens, Link Peak, the ancestor of the cosmic sect, Zhou Jidao, the ancestor of the God's Fallen clan, Luo Mantian, the ancestor of the Fire God clan, Lian Wuji, the ancestor of the Tong family, Tong Wuming. Aside from the 5 of them, the remaining 2 people were the other 2 ancestors who rarely showed themselves in the Righteous Alliance. They were the ancestor of the Taoist sect of emergence, He Dao, and the ancestor of the Heftrembling sect, Guli. The ancestor of the Taoist sect of emergence, He Dao, was a scholarly, middle-aged man. He gave off a rather scholarly aura. At first glance, he seemed like a scholar who was well-read. As for the ancestor of the Heftrembling sect, Guli, he was an extremely burly man. He was bare-chested, and his well-defined, bronze muscles were filled with explosive power. It was quite a shocking sight. This time, the 7 peak experts of the Righteous Alliance had gathered here. They had basically turned out in full force, which placed great pressure on the Four Symbols Alliance. After all, the Four Symbols Alliance was nowhere near as powerful as the Righteous Alliance. The reason why they could still exist was because the peak experts of the Righteous Alliance were all selfish. None of them were willing to pay such a heavy price to fight the Four Symbols Alliance to the death. All of them wanted to protect themselves, which was why the Four Symbols Alliance was still standing. Friends of the Righteous Alliance, are you preparing for a bloody battle against our Four Symbols Alliance by gathering so many people? An old voice rang out. 3 figures appeared beside Wu Lu and Gong Ji. The other 3 supreme experts of the Four Symbols Alliance, the Gentle Breeze ancestor, Chang Fengyan, and Zhang, who appeared at the same time. Although the Gentle Breeze ancestor didn't quite agree with Wu Lu and Gong Ji's methods, they had to unite now that the experts of the Righteous Alliance were out in full force. Otherwise, they would be defeated one by one. As for the members of the Tianyuan family, from top to bottom, their spirits were greatly lifted as they revealed excited expressions. The Alliance of Justice and Order stance clearly showed that they were on their side. They all saw hope in obtaining the support of a dominating organization like the Righteous Alliance at a time like this. Their hearts immediately burned with passion. Fantastic! I never thought the Righteous Alliance would actually stand with the Tianyuan family. Protector Mei, Protector Xing, and Protector Bai were overjoyed as well. Even though the Righteous Alliance was not enough to suppress the young Star Lord, it was more than enough to stop the Four Symbols Alliance. The Lord of the Heavens, Link Peak, hovered in the air with his hands behind his back. He glanced past the young Star Lord before looking at the Gentle Breeze ancestor and the other 4 ancestors. He said, slowly, the Tianyuan family is a friend of our Righteous Alliance. If you want to lay your hands on the Tianyuan family, our Righteous Alliance naturally won't just stand by and watch. Humph. In other words, your Righteous Alliance wants to help the Tianyuan family? The young Star Lord snorted coldly when he heard that. Even though he was only a divine king, he showed no respect at all before the 7 peak experts of the Righteous Alliance. Instead, he gave off a sense of superiority. He glanced past the 7 experts of the Righteous Alliance sharply and said coldly, "There's only one outcome for those who oppose me. Death." Humph, how arrogant. The eyes of the ancestor of the God's Fallen clan, Luo Mantion, turned cold. A tremendous and terrifying presence radiated from him, shaking up the surroundings and scattering the thick clouds in the sky. He extended a finger, and a strand of pure energy immediately shot out, directly shooting towards the young Star Lord. The strand of energy was not powerful. It could only heavily injure the Divine King and not kill him. Clearly, Luo Mantion only wanted to teach the young Star Lord a lesson and make him suffer a little from the attack. Luo Mantion, the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, the ancestor of the Fire God clan, the ancestor of the Tong family, and the ancestor of the Cosmic Sect all called out. They secretly cursed Luo Mantion for acting so recklessly. It was not like he did not know the young Star Lord's identity. So how could he touch him so easily? Jianqin frowned when he saw Luo Mantion attack without any warning, and his target was the young Star Lord. He felt that Luo Mantion's actions were rather illogical. After all, the young Star Lord was the son of the 9 brilliant Star Lord. Attacking the young Star Lord, regardless of whether he wanted to kill him or not, was equivalent to directly offending the 9 brilliant Star Lord. From the moment we decided to help the Tianyuan family, we've already offended the young Star Lord. Since that's the case, why do we have to be so cowardly? Why don't we just be straightforward and bind ourselves to the Tianyuan family? Then we can use the Tianyuan family to climb up the ranks of the heavenly palace of Bishing. Otherwise, our righteous alliance will be destroyed sooner or later, Luo Mantion said to the others secretly. How dare you? Luo Mantion, do you know who the young Star Lord is? How dare you attack the young Star Lord? Gong Ji bellowed out furiously from beside the young Star Lord. With a wave of her hand, she dispersed Luo Mantion's energy that was not particularly powerful. Gong Ji, kill Luo Mantion for me. Take this jade talisman. It contains a secret technique of our Star Brilliance Mountain. The young Star Lord passed a jade talisman to Gong Ji with a sunken face. Gong Ji was originally rather hesitant, as the 4 Symbols Alliance would not be able to gain the upper hand at all if they really began fighting. Not only did the Righteous Alliance have 7 experts, but they also had the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, the greatest expert on the Cloud Plane. However, when she received the jade talisman from the young Star Lord, a strange light immediately flashed through her eyes. She said, "The secret technique of the Star Brilliance Mountain really is different. Luo Mantion die." With a furious bellow, Gong Ji directly charged towards Luo Mantion. Let's fight in outer space." Luo Mantion snorted coldly and charged into outer space in a single instance. Gong Ji chased after him silently. She unleashed her presence as a Grand Prime, causing the stars to churn. The terrifying pulses of energy caused space to collapse. Luo Mantion and Gong Ji began an earth-shaking battle in outer space. Even from afar, the terrifying pulses of energy and devastating presence that erupted caused the expressions of the members of the upper echelon of the Tianyuan family to change. Even if just a tiny bit of the energy landed on the ground, it would be enough to shatter mountains and destroy an entire region. Luo Mantion and Gong Ji have already begun fighting. Why don't we use this opportunity to wipe out the 4 Symbols Alliance in a single stroke and eliminate all future problems? The ancestor of the Heaven-Shaking Sect, Gu Li, suddenly spoke. Killing intent flashed in his eyes as he bellowed, "Wu Lu, our previous battle isn't over yet." As the sound of his voice faded, Gu Li directly punched towards Wu Lu. The punch possessed extremely great power. With a single punch, it could destroy everything. It reduced the origin energy in the surroundings to tiny atoms, causing the air to rumble with the sound of explosions. Gu Li actually controlled the laws of strength. The laws of strength were ranked the same as the laws of the sword. They were both laws with extremely powerful offensive abilities. Wu Lu did not receive the attack forcefully. He vanished with a flash and charged into outer space, engaging in an intense battle with Guli there. I'll go assist Luo Mantion in killing Gongji. Why don't we completely wipe out the Four Symbols Alliance this time and eliminate all future problems? Said the ancestor of the Taoist sect of emergence, He Dao. He also charged into outer space. Chapter 2661. In the blink of an eye, Luo Mantion, Guli, and He Dao, the three grand primes of the Righteous Alliance, had attacked Gongwu and Gongwu. That was the battle with Wu Lu and Gongji in outer space. The terrifying ripples of energy that erupted were extremely destructive, shaking up space. Even the sun in the sky paled in comparison. All the stars dimmed as space constantly shattered and recovered. It all happened so quickly that the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak was unable to stop it even if he wanted to. Although the Grand Primes of the Righteous Alliance and the Four Symbols Alliance had clashed many times during the period of unrest on the Cloud Plane, they had tried to destroy the Four Symbols Alliance more than once. However, the current Four Symbols Alliance could not be compared to the past. With the young Star Lord support, the Righteous Alliance became rather fearful. Since we've already reached this point, we might as well go all the way. Let's use this opportunity to destroy the Four Symbols Alliance in a single stroke. Otherwise, once they really obtain the support of the Star Brilliance Mountain, it'll be a disaster for our Righteous Alliance, Tong Wuming said secretly. That's right. If we don't destroy the Four Symbols Alliance now, we probably won't have another chance in the future. After all, the young Star Lord has already sided with the Four Symbols Alliance. Whether our Righteous Alliance can obtain the protection of the Heavenly Palace of Bixing is still unknown. The ancestor of the cosmic sect, Zhou Dao, added, Luo Mantion and the others had already clashed with the Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance. This seemed to be the only path before them now. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak stared at the battle in outer space. In the end, he nodded slowly and said, Fair enough. However, since we've made up our mind to destroy the Four Symbols Alliance, I hope everyone can use their full strength this time. Don't hold back. Don't worry. We've already reached the most critical moment. If anyone holds back like before, they'll just be digging their own graves. Once the Four Symbols Alliance recovers and gains the support of the Star Brilliance Mountain, our Righteous Alliance will truly be nothing, said the ancestor of the cosmic sect, Zhou Dao. The powerhouses of the Righteous Alliance were communicating via telepathy. Only the 7 of them knew what they were saying and what they were deciding. In the next moment, the Grand Primes of the Righteous Alliance all appeared. They engaged in an intense battle with the Gentle Breeze ancestor, Chang Fengyan and Zheng Hu. Immediately, deafening booms boomed out from outer space like thunder, causing the distant cloud plane to shake violently. The battle between 12 Grand Primes was truly devastating. Even the sky cracked as regions of the vast cosmos collapsed. Countless spatial cracks interweaved together, forming a huge, dense web. Violent storms of energy surged out from space, giving off a chaotic and violent presence. The Grand Primes of the Alliance. However, the battle this time, it was much more of the battle between the Four Symbols Alliance of the Four Symbols of the world. This was because the experts of the Righteous Alliance had truly used their full strength this time, engaging in a battle of life and death against the Four Symbols Alliance. They no longer held back like before. As a result, the Four Symbols Alliance was at an absolute disadvantage as soon as the battle began. They were basically suppressed by the Righteous Alliance, only able to defend passively. After all, not only did the Righteous Alliance have the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, the greatest expert of the Cloud Plane, but they also had 7 people. On the other hand, not only did the Four Symbols Alliance have no one who could defeat the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, but they also had Zheng Hu, who was basically the weakest Grand Prime. After all, Zheng Hu had only broken through to Grand Prime recently. As a result, he was basically the weakest among Grand Primes. He was not particularly eye-catching, nor was he a supreme prodigy with the ability to challenge those who surpassed him. Everyone in the Tianyuan family on the cloud plane stared at outer space. A battle between 12 Grand Primes was basically an unprecedented battle on the cloud plane. It was rare to see something like this even once in several million years. Even though very few of them could see it clearly, just the sight of the multicolored sky from the explosions of energy was enough to shock many of them. Don't tell me the Four Symbols Alliance can't even survive the Righteous Alliance. Su Ran stood beside Jianqin as she took pleasure in the Four Symbols Alliance's misfortune. She could naturally tell with a single glance that the Four Symbols Alliance was at an absolute disadvantage. The difference is just too great. They're not on the same level at all. If the Righteous Alliance unleashes their full strength, destroying the Four Symbols Alliance won't be difficult at all. However, if the people from the Four Symbols Alliance really end up risking their lives or sacrificing themselves, they really might be able to kill 1 or 2 people from the Righteous Alliance. After all, she had come from the heavenly palace of Bixing. Even though Su Ran was not a Grand Prime, her insight was extraordinary. Jianqin remained silent the entire time. He would look at the battle in outer space from time to time at the young Star Lord, and he gradually frowned. From the beginning to the end, the young Star Lord remained calm, as if victory was within his grasp. Jianqin felt that something was amiss from his composure. It was as if the Four Symbols Alliance had something else to rely on. At this moment, the tremendous might of the world appeared. Gong Ji was already rather overwhelmed as she faced Luo Mantian and He Dao at the same time. She was forced to use a God-tier battle skill. This was a high-level God-tier battle skill. Normally, only Grand Primes could use it, but when she used it now, it actually seemed to fuse with the ways of the world. In the end, the God-tier battle skill turned into a dazzling streak of white light, striking towards Luo Mantian with enough power to illuminate the surroundings. Spurt! Luo Mantian spat out a mouthful of blood as his face paled. Like a meteor flying at high speed, he quickly flew backwards. Luo Mantian! The expression of He Dao, who was also fighting Gong Ji, changed as well. He immediately abandoned Gong Ji and flew towards Luo Mantian. Near Luo Mantian was the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, who was fighting the Gentle Breeze ancestor. When he saw Luo Mantian fly over with heavy injuries, he immediately used his full strength to force back the Gentle Breeze ancestor. Afterwards, he extended his hand, and a powerful and gentle energy wrapped around Luo Mantian. He asked in concern, "Luo Mantian, are you fine?" Luo Mantian coughed up a mouthful of blood. Just when he said that, something happened. A dagger that flickered with dark green light silently appeared in his hand like a venomous snake. He stabbed it towards the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak with lightning speed. Everything happened just too quickly. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak was completely unprepared, so Luo Mantian's sneak attack succeeded. The dagger that flickered with green light directly stabbed into his waist. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak grunted. His eyes were filled with disbelief and shock. Afterwards, he directly struck out with his hand. Heavy energy with the power of laws struck towards Luo Mantian's head mercilessly. At that moment, Luo Mantian's presence skyrocketed. He did not seem injured at all. He struck out with both hands, clashing with the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. With a boom, he was blown away by the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. Blood spurted from his mouth. This time he really had vomited blood. Luo Mantian, W, what are you doing? Peak Lord, Peak Lord. He Dao's face changed drastically as he cried out in shock. He arrived before the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak in a flash. Luo Mantian, have you lost your mind? Peak Lord, are you fine? Gu Li bellowed out furiously as well. He immediately abandoned Wu Lu and approached the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. The sudden change of events threw the entire battlefield into chaos. At the same time, Lian Wuji, Zhou Zhidao, and Tong Wuming all stopped fighting. They called out and hurried towards the Lord of the Heavens' Link Peak. Luo Mantian, why are you doing this? The Lord of the Heavens' Link Peak clutched his wound. Blood dyed his white robes red, while a faint green gradually appeared on his face and skin. His old eyes were filled with pain as he stared fixedly at Luo Mantian. Peak Lord, heal first. He Dao and Guli arrived beside the Lord of the Heavens' Link Peak at the same time. They were the closest to the Lord of the Heavens' Link Peak, so they were faster than the other three. However, at this moment, something happened once again. He Dao and Guli suddenly launched their attacks. A sword and an iron fist struck out at the same time, pincer from the left and right, viciously landing on the Lord of the Heavens' Link Peak. He Dao's sword shone brightly as it stabbed into the Lord of the Heavens' Link Peak's left waist. The sharp tip of the sword emerged from the right. On the other hand, Guli sent a punch containing the laws of strength at the Peak Master's back, piercing through his chest. His fist was dripping with blood. Chapter 2662. Everything had happened too quickly. From Luo Mantian's sneak attack to Guli and He Dao's combined sneak attack, it had all happened in a split second. It had not even taken a few seconds. The three of them had suddenly launched a sneak attack when the Peak Lord was caught off guard, immediately dealing unimaginable damage to him. The damage was even enough to kill him. After all, whether it be Luo Mantian, Guli, or He Dao, they were all Grand Primes. Every single one of their attacks possessed the power of destruction. When such terrifying power struck the defenseless Lord of the Heavens' Link Peak, it was possible to imagine just how terrifying of a blow the Peak Lord had to endure. Immediately, the Peak Lord of the Heavens' Link Peak, who is known as the greatest expert on the cloud plane, was in great danger. On the other side, the expressions of Tong Wuming, Lian Wuji, and Zhou Zhidao suddenly changed as they approached the Lord of the Heavens' Link Peak. Looking at the sword that had pierced through the Lord of the Heavens' Link Peak's waist and the fist that had pierced through the Lord of the Heavens' Link Peak's chest, they felt the world spin around them. At this moment, how could the three of them not understand that Luo Mantian of the God's Fallen clan, He Dao of the Taoist sect of emergence, and Guli of the Heav-shaking sect had all betrayed the righteous alliance? Moreover, they had dealt a fatal blow when the Peak Lord was caught off guard at such a crucial moment. Luo Mantian, He Dao, Guli, you all deserve to die. The ancestor of the Fire God clan, Lian Wuji, had always been a hot-tempered person. Luo Mantian, He Dao, and He Dao's betrayal seemed to have completely infuriated him. The flames on his body suddenly swelled, sweeping through the entire region of outer space. It constantly twisted from the heat as the temperature of the region suddenly skyrocketed. At this moment, the temperature emitted from Lian Wuji's body was thousands of times hotter than the sun. The flames that filled the sky turned into 3 long dragons that charged towards Luo Mantian, He Dao, and Guli. At the same time, Tong Wuming and Zhou Zhidao struck out without any hesitation. They abandoned their original opponents and attacked the three of them from afar. At the same time, they rapidly approached the Peak Lord of the Heavens' Link Peak. However, the space that had become unstable due to their battle hindered their progress. As a result, they were much slower in approaching the Peak Lord of Heaven's Link Peak. They were nowhere near as fast as Luo Mantian and the other two. Otherwise, they would only need a single step to arrive before the Lord of the Heavens' Link Peak. The Gentle Breeze ancestor, Zhang Hu and Chang Fengyin stopped as well. They were stunned by the sudden change in the Righteous Alliance. They stared at the people from the Righteous Alliance with furrowed brows, confused. Only Wu Lu and Gong Ji, who knew the inside story, were excited. They looked at the Righteous Alliance that was killing each other and gloated. Gentle Breeze, what's going on? Chang Fengyin asked the Gentle Breeze ancestor through voice transmission. He was confused. Can't you tell now? Luo Mantian, He Dao, and Guli of the Righteous Alliance have all joined the young Star Lord. Gong Ji's voice rang out. At the same time, she tossed the jade talisman with the secret technique of the Star Brilliance Mountain that the young Star Lord had given her to the people from the Four Symbols Alliance. The Gentle Breeze ancestor and the others all caught the jade talisman. They discovered that the jade talisman did not contain the so-called secret technique of the Star Brilliance Mountain at all. It was just a message from the young Star Lord. The rough idea was for Gong Ji to put on a show with Luo Mantian so that the peak experts of the Righteous Alliance would all take part in the battle and find an opportunity to launch a sneak attack on the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak was a peak third heavenly layer Grand Prime after all. He was more powerful than anyone on the cloud plane, so it was very difficult for a regular sneak attack to succeed. They could only create an opportunity in a chaotic battle. I see. Chang Fengyin and Zheng, who came to a realization. Immediately, their gazes towards the people from the Four Symbols Alliance changed. They were no longer as stern as before. From today onwards, the Righteous Alliance will cease to exist on the cloud plane, Zheng Hu sighed. Zheng Hu hissed. The Righteous Alliance originally had 7 top-notch cultivators, but now 3 of them had betrayed them. Only the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, Tong Wuming, Lian Wuji, and Zhou Zhidao were left. Moreover, the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak was heavily injured among the 4 of them. His strength had plummeted. On the other hand, their Four Symbols Alliance had 8 people in total, including the traitorous Luo Mantian and the other 2. They basically possessed an absolute advantage. Why are you like this? The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak's face was rather gloomy. Large patches of his skin had already changed in color. However, he did not care about his wounds at all. Instead, he looked at Luo Mantian, Guli, and He Dao in great pain. The Righteous Alliance is done for. We've only chosen a path of survival, the ancestor of the Heavenly Clan said calmly. The ancestor of the Heaven-shaking sect, Guli, said calmly. There was no trace of guilt in his eyes. Instead, he was calm and indifferent. Afterwards, he and He Dao retreated as quickly as possible, pulling away from the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. They understood the strength of the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak extremely well. He was a supreme expert who could fight against the 4th heavenly layer Grand Prime, the Heavenless Demon Exalt. Even though he was heavily injured right now, he still posed a great threat to them. At the same time, Lian Wuji's 3 fire dragons that were basically condensed from the laws of fire caught up as well, wrapping around the 3 of them. You, 3 traitors. Old man will turn you to dust. Lian Wuji bellowed out. The laws of fire in the surroundings condensed, becoming more and more powerful. Boom! At this moment, there was a muffled sound. Luo Mantian broke free from Lian Wuji's fire dragons first. He used terrifying energy to shatter the fire dragons around him. Afterwards, he swung his dagger and gently slashed the fire dragons around He Dao and Guli. The fire dragon coiled around He Dao, and Guli immediately became like a deflated balloon. Its might weakened, and it was dispersed by the 2 of them. Immediately, the 3 of them broke free, successfully. Aside from Luo Mantian, Guli and He Dao were in horrible shape. Large patches of their skin had been charred black, and they were covered in dust. This Lian Wuji really is powerful. He really is worthy of being a 2nd heavenly layer Grand Prime. Guli looked at his pitch-black arm and exclaimed. Only Luo Mantian was at the 2nd heavenly layer among the 3 of them. He Dao and He Dao were at the 1st heavenly layer, so it was naturally rather difficult for them to block Lian Wuji's furious strike. So what if he's at the 2nd heavenly layer? He'll die soon, He Dao said calmly before arriving with Guli and Luo Mantian. He stared at them coldly. Lian Wuji, Tong Wuming, and Zhou Zhidao did not pursue them. Instead, they arrived beside the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. Their faces were extremely ugly. This is the power of the curse. Luo Mantian, why? You sure are vicious. Tong Wuming stared at the green skin on the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak and said painfully. His voice was filled with fury. He could tell with a single glance that the true fatal wound on the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak was not from He Dao or Guli. Instead, it was the power of the curse on Luo Montian's dagger. The power of the curse was the greatest threat. It was like a venomous snake, constantly gnawing away at the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak's flesh. It basically drained away the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak's vitality at all times. Compared to the power of the curse, the wounds from He Dao and Gu Li were not as severe. Chapter 2663. Tong Wuming and Zhou Jidao's expressions became ugly when they saw the power of the curse that had already spread throughout the Peak Lord's body and was rapidly deepening. The level of laws that the power of the curse involved surpassed theirs. As a result, Lian Wuji, Tong Wuming, and Zhou Jidao were powerless against the curse on the Peak Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. The power of curses was extremely difficult to deal with. If one wanted to nullify it, they needed an expert who had also comprehended the power of curses and used the same laws of curses to slowly nullify it. Moreover, with the level of the laws of curses that the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak suffered from, they needed a late chaotic prime at the very least to nullify it. Otherwise, if their comprehension of the laws of curses was too low, they would be like ants trying to destroy an elephant. They would not be able to harm the Peak Lord at all. Of course, they could also find a supreme expert whose comprehension surpassed the owner of the curse and forcefully nullify the power of the curse with even more profound and powerful power of laws. That would also resolve the crisis the Peak Lord faced. However, the Cloud Plane did not possess the conditions to nullify the two powers of the curse. It's fine. The power of the curse has only been applied to the God artifact, so it's weakened. It won't be able to take my life for now. The Peak Lord's voice was rather weak. He had been ambushed by Luo Mantian, Guli, and He Dao first. Not only was he heavily injured, but he also had to use most of his power to suppress the power of the curse. As a result, he struggled to unleash even 30% of his strength. The injuries to his physical body could be treated with high-grade elixirs, but the curse power in his body had to be suppressed through his own cultivation. I really never thought that Luo Mantian, Guli, and He Dao would betray the Righteous Alliance and work with the Four Symbols Alliance. The Peak Lord sighed at the sky. He was melancholic. It'll probably be very difficult for our Righteous Alliance to survive this crisis. Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, that's where you're wrong. The three of us are not working with the Four Symbols Alliance. Instead, we've chosen to follow the Young Star Lord, Luo Mantian said calmly. He did not feel guilty at all. He had avoided any grievances with the Four Symbols Alliance by saying that he was following the Young Star Lord. Peak Lord, I must admit that you were very wise in the past, but you've made a mistake this time. You shouldn't have stood with the Tianyuan family. After all, the Tianyuan family only has Mingdong, who has connections with the Heavenly Palace of Bixing. Even though Mingdong has some status in the Heavenly Palace of Bixing, it's nowhere near as great as the Young Star Lord. At most of the Heavenly Mountain of the Heavenly Clan. But the Young Star Lord is the son of the 9 Brilliant Star, the Peak Lord's strength. Guwith of the Heavenly Chi of the Heavenly Heavens. Gu Li of Heaven's Shaking Sect said. The law of power revolved around his body. Each of his bulging muscles contained explosive power. The burned parts of his body were rapidly recovering. Most importantly, a true sovereign stands behind the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. That's an existence that has transformed into the laws of the world. He can interfere with the operations of the laws of the world with his own will. He's the ruler of a world. He's supreme. However, the Heavenly Palace of Bixing only has the first majesty. How can the Heavenly Palace of Bixing stand against the star Brilliance Mountain like that? He Dao from the Taoist sect of emergence said as well. As soon as he mentioned the sovereign, his eyes were filled with undisguised admiration and reverence. Even though he understood that the so-called sovereign was actually just a step beyond the 9th heavenly layer of Grand Prime. He was still a Grand Prime. However, this step was like ascending to the heavens. It was like the difference between heaven and earth. Righteous Alliance. Ever since the Tian Empire was destroyed in the past, we've always been in conflict. After so many years, we can finally put an end to it today, Gong Ji from the Four Symbols Alliance said. Said the old Gong Ji from the Four Symbols Alliance. Her deep eyes did not show any hesitation at all. Instead, they were filled with coldness and killing intent. What's the point of saying so much? Let's move together and destroy them as soon as possible. From today onwards, our Four Symbols Alliance will be in charge of the Cloud Plain, Wu Lu said rather eagerly. He even felt a sliver of excitement. Their Four Symbols Alliance was about to achieve what the Tian Empire had failed to achieve. The Gentle Breeze ancestor said nothing. He remained frowning the entire time as he hovered in the sea of stars silently. He glanced past the three experts who had betrayed the Righteous Alliance from time to time, and the light in his eyes flickered. Luo Mantian, He Dao, and Gu Li's betrayal had taken him by surprise. However, the Gentle Breeze ancestor felt very conflicted about their decision to submit to the young Star Lord. This was because the grievances between the Four Symbols Alliance and the Righteous Alliance were already so deep that they were difficult to resolve. Gong Ji and Wu Lu could let bygones be bygones, but the others were not as open-minded. Also, how many of them were willing to give up on their hatred and hatred? Chang Fengyin and Zheng, who remained silent as well. Clearly, they struggled to accept Luo Mantian, He Dao, and He Dao. After all, many experts and talented disciples from their clans and sects had died at the hands of the God's Fallen clan, the Heav-Shaking sect, and the Taoist sect of Emergence. This grievance could not be resolved with just a few words. After all, not everyone was as open-minded as Gong Ji and Wu Lu. As if she could guess what the three of them were thinking, Gong Ji said to the Gentle Breeze ancestor, Chang Fengyin, and Zheng, who secretly, the matter at hand is to destroy the Righteous Alliance. As for Luo Mantian and He Dao, the young Star Lord won't remain on the Cloud Plain forever. Once the situation on the Cloud Plain stabilizes, we'll have plenty of ways to deal with them. What's going on? Why have you all stopped? Why don't you do something and destroy those people from the Righteous Alliance? Humph! Only death awaits those who oppose me. At this moment, the young Star Lord flew out from the Cloud Plain. He was confident that victory was within his grasp. There were two chaotic primes beside the young Star Lord. They were responsible for his safety and preventing any accidents from happening when the peak experts of the Four Symbols Alliance clashed with the Righteous Alliance. The battle between the Grand Primes stopped. The patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, Jianqin, and Su Ran flew into outer space together, arriving beside the Lord of the Heavens, Link Peak. Peak Lord, your wounds. Jianqin stared at the power of curses on the Lord of the Heavens, Link Peak, sternly. He had also comprehended the laws of curses, but it remained at the early divine king realm. As a result, he could clearly sense just how powerful the power of curses on the Lord of the Heavens, Link Peak, was. This was the power of laws on the level of Grand Primes. It's not enough to take my life for now. We've lost this battle, so we need to give the order to retreat quickly and abandon our foundation on the Cloud Plain, the Lord of the Heavens, Link Peak, said telepathically. Now that the Four Symbols Alliance had 8 experts, it was impossible for Lian Wuji, Tong Wuming, and Zhou Zhidao to emerge victorious against the Four Symbols Alliance. This was because they did not have an expert who could suppress all of them. The Gentle Breeze ancestor is a 3rd Heavenly Layer Grand Prime. Even though he's only a new expert who has broken through 2 centuries ago, only the Lord of the Heavens, Link Peak, can defeat him. We can only retreat now. Tong Wuming sighed gently. Seniors, it's still too early to say such things. We still don't know who will emerge victorious in this battle. We still don't know the outcome of the battle, said Jianqin. He was extremely calm and composed. Afterwards, he looked at the young Star Lord and said, you celebrate a little too early. Do you really think you can kill me with just the Four Symbols Alliance? As soon as Jianqin finished speaking, the space nearby suddenly distorted. The starlight was obscured, and the figure of a huge mountain appeared silently. This mountain was incomparably large. It covered the sky and blocked out the stars in the sky. From its initial blurry state, it quickly became clear. In the end, it seemed to have taken physical form. It silently appeared in the starry sky and arrived near the cloud plain like a ghost. This is. Whether it was the Righteous Alliance or the Four Symbols Alliance, they were all shocked when they saw the mountain that had suddenly appeared. This was because the huge mountain had just appeared too suddenly. Even as Grand Primes, they had failed to sense it at all. They were unable to sense where the mountain had come from or where it had come from. It was as if the mountain had always been hidden here and had only revealed itself at this moment. This seems to be the legendary Martial Soul Mountain. The gentle breeze ancestor stared at the mountain that had appeared silently as he growled. The Martial Soul Mountain was an object of legend in the eyes of many experts in the Saints' world. It only existed in rumors. There were not many people who had actually seen it. This was because the Saints' world was just too vast, and the Martial Soul Mountain did not remain in a single place. It floated in outer space without a fixed location. Apart from the successors of the Martial Soul lineage, it was very difficult for others to find traces of the Martial Soul Mountain. As a result, the Martial Soul Mountain was an object of legend to many Grand Primes. What? The Martial Soul Mountain? Is this the Martial Soul Mountain? The Martial Soul Mountain is the symbol of the Martial Soul lineage. Since the Martial Soul Mountain has appeared here, it means that the Martial Soul lineage has descended on our cloud plane. The ancestors of the Four Symbols Alliance all cried out. All of them were unfamiliar with the Martial Soul Mountain, but they had heard many legends about the Martial Soul lineage. The Martial Soul lineage was an extremely unique lineage in the vast Saints' world. Even though they were few in number, no one dared to underestimate them. This was because every successor of the Martial Soul lineage possessed extremely great battle prowess. Fighting those at a higher level of cultivation was nothing new to them. The supreme prodigies that many large sects and organizations nurtured with great effort paled in comparison to any successor of the Martial Soul lineage. They were the symbol of invincibility among those at the same level of cultivation. They were invincible, true figures who could contend against the successors of Grand Exalts. Chapter 2664. Don't tell me Jianqin invited the Martial Soul lineage over? That's impossible. How can Jianqin be connected to the Martial Soul lineage? Gong Ji refused to accept this reality. The gentle breeze ancestor, Changfengyin, Zhang Hu, Wu Lu, Luo Mantian, He Dao, Guli, and so on all stared at the Martial Soul Mountain that had suddenly appeared in surprise and doubt. The light in their eyes flickered. On the cloud plain, none of the peak experts from the Righteous Alliance or the Four Symbols Alliance knew about the relationship between the Martial Soul lineage and Jianqin. This was because the cloud plane was one of the weakest planes in the Saints' world. The information they had was limited. It was impossible for them to know everything in the vast Saints' world. Only the young star Lord knew about Jianqin. He also knew that Jianqin was the 8th successor of the Martial Soul lineage. However, the young star Lord did not take the Martial Soul lineage seriously at all. What's there to be afraid of? Isn't it just the Martial Soul lineage? What's there to worry about? If they offend me, once Father takes action, they won't be able to avoid destruction even if they hide in the Martial Soul Mountain, the young Star Lord said proudly. With the 9 brilliant Star Lord's support, he feared nothing at all. The Martial Soul lineage was indeed no threat to the Star Brilliance Mountain. On the cloud plain, the experts of the Tianyuan family faced off against the army of the Four Symbols Alliance outside the fortress of the Pingtian Empire. All the primordial realm experts, on both sides, stared at outer space. The battle between Grand Primes was just too intense. so they were unable to approach it with the senses of their souls. However, this did not stop them from observing with their eyes. Luo Mantian, Guli, and Hiidao's betrayal shocked everyone on both sides. No one had expected the situation to take such a huge turn, where the Four Symbols Alliance that originally possessed the upper hand immediately fell into a disadvantage. The Righteous Alliance is finished. I never thought that the God's Fallen Clan, Taoist sect of emergence, and Heav-shaking sect would actually betray us. Haha, their betrayal has forced the Righteous Alliance into a corner. The Righteous Alliance is about to be destroyed. A chaotic prime laughed aloud from the Four Symbols Alliance. He was extremely delighted. In the past, the Righteous Alliance had once suffocated them because they understood the Righteous Alliance's strength. With what they had accumulated, the Four Symbols Alliance was not their opponent at all. Once the Lord of the Heavens link peak broke through, it would be the end of their Four Symbols Alliance. Yet now, the Righteous Alliance had actually fallen into internal strife. The Righteous Alliance had plummeted from heaven to hell in a single stroke. This greatly excited the experts of the Four Symbols Alliance. On the other side of the Tianyuan family, Protector Shui, Protector Mei, Protector Xing, and Protector by all had extremely ugly expressions. The Peak Lord of Heaven's Link Peak was heavily injured, and the betrayal of Luo Mantian and the others made them feel like they were facing the end of the world. Look, a mountain has suddenly appeared in outer space. It's such a huge mountain, and it's actually completely condensed from energy. Just how much energy is needed to create this? Suddenly, a chaotic prime great elder from the Four Symbols Alliance cried out. Immediately, the martial soul mountain that had silently descended appeared before everyone's eyes. Due to the distance, the colossal martial soul mountain was only the size of a sesame seed in everyone's eyes. This is the martial soul mountain. Why has the martial soul mountain come here? Protector Shui of the Tianyuan family cried out. He stared at the martial soul mountain in outer space as a strange light shone in his eyes. Martial Soul Mountain? Protector Shui, what kind of organization is the Martial Soul Mountain? Are they very powerful? Protector Mei, Protector Bai, and Protector Xing all looked at Protector Shui. Although the Martial Soul Mountain was very famous in the Saints' world, not everyone knew about it. Only a few ancient experts or well-informed people knew about its existence. Martial Soul Mountain? What organization is that? But it does sound slightly familiar, as if I've seen it in some ancient record, but I can't remember it. A great elder from the Four Symbols Alliance frowned when he heard Protector Shui's cry. He murmured softly as he sank into his thoughts. The Martial Soul Mountain is an everlasting legacy of the Saints' world, the Martial Soul lineage. Our Four Symbols Alliance doesn't have a lot of records regarding the Martial Soul lineage, but the records do describe the Martial Soul lineage as extremely impressive, said a great elder from the side. He stared at the Martial Soul Mountain in outer space as he felt some curiosity. Extremely impressive? How impressive is that? According to the records, it's a god of slaughter, a king of the same level of cultivation. A pressure suddenly appeared in outer space. Powerful pulses of energy churned up the river of stars, causing the expressions of all the grand primes from the Righteous Alliance and Four Symbols Alliance to change. The colossal mountain condensed from energy finally demonstrated its might and power at that moment. The Martial Soul lineage really does live up to its name. Just the illusionary Martial Soul mountain before us possesses far more energy than me. Lian Wuji sighed in amazement. The Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, Tong Wuming, Zhou Jidao, and the others remained silent. However, they all stared at the Martial Soul Mountain. Clearly, they had no idea why the Martial Soul Mountain had come. Swish, swish, swish. 3 figures flew over from the Martial Soul Mountain. They did not give off any earth-shaking presences. They seemed like 3 ghosts, silently moving through the cold, dark space. They moved extremely quickly, arriving before Jianqin in a single instance. They were Hunzong, Chu Jian and Yu Chao. The eyes of the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji, all narrowed. The approach of the martial soul lineage immediately made them raise their guard, secretly. Even though Hunzong, Chu Jian, and Yu Chao were all chaotic primes, the Grand Primes dared not to be careless against the martial soul lineage. Eighth Junior, who's offended you? Tell me, and I'll go take his head, Hunzong said casually. Hunzong said indifferently. He did not take the Grand Primes, gathered here, seriously at all. The hearts of the Grand Primes all shuddered when they heard how Hunzong referred to them as Eighth Junior. Shock filled their eyes. Since the people from the Martial Soul Mountain referred to Jianqin as Junior, did that not mean that Jianqin was also a successor of the Martial Soul lineage? How can Jianqin be a member of the Martial Soul lineage? That's impossible. The Gentle Breeze, ancestor of the Four Symbols Alliance, was in disbelief as well. He knew a little more about the secrets of the Martial Soul lineage. It was known as an indestructible legacy in the Saints' world. In the Saints' world, even peak organizations with grand exalts would not dare to claim that their legacy was indestructible because many grand exalts had been destroyed throughout history. However, the Martial Soul lineage was truly indestructible. Chapter 2665. Greetings to First Senior Brother, Second Senior Brother, and Third Senior Brother. I'll probably have to rely on you this time. Jianqin clasped his fist. He glanced at Yu Chao and discovered that Yu Chao had basically recovered from his injuries from the protector swords, so he immediately stopped worrying. Haha, we're all brothers of the same sect, so let's not be so formal. Moreover, Eighth Junior Brother, you're the most outstanding out of the 8 of us. Who knows? We might even have to rely on you in the future. Chu Jian laughed. Chu Jian chuckled aloud. He truly treated Jianqin as a fellow disciple. He did not have any selfish motives, nor did he try to deceive or deceive him. The Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance were stern. They had never thought that Jianqin was actually a member of the Martial Soul lineage. Now that the Martial Soul Mountain had descended, they found it troublesome. Even though the Martial Soul lineage did not have any Grand Primes, they were still renowned. All the experts who knew a little about the Martial Soul lineage would fear the Martial Soul lineage slightly unless they were terrifyingly powerful enough to be fearless. The Martial Soul lineage is known to be invincible among the same level of cultivation. Their battle prowess is extremely impressive, but they're only chaotic primes in the end. The difference between chaotic primes and grand primes is like a chasm. I really don't believe they can challenge grand primes with their cultivation as 9th heavenly layer chaotic primes. However, Gu Li from the Heft-Trembling sect did not fear the Martial Soul lineage at all. He had comprehended the laws of strength, so his battle prowess was one of the best among the same level of cultivation. He took a step forward. His eyes were cold as he radiated with killing intent. The laws of strength in the surroundings revolved around him, and every single muscle on his body possessed destructive power. With a single movement, he could shatter space. I'm Gu Li from the Heft-Trembling sect, and I've come to experience the so-called Martial Soul force of the Martial Soul lineage. However, let me make this clear first. If you're not as powerful as the legends say, you can't blame anyone if you accidentally die to my fist. Gu Li sneered with ridicule and mockery. Gu Li sneered with a hint of mockery and provocation. Then he directly attacked, breaking the void with a punch. The power was so terrifying that it caused the starry sky to tremble. Thousands of stars were swaying. He did not hold back with the punch. It was filled with killing intent. You're just a grand prime who has comprehended the laws of strength, and you're only at the first heavenly layer. Yet you dare to provoke our Martial Soul lineage? A sliver of disdain appeared on Chu Jian's face. He looked at Gu Li, and powerful Martial Soul force suddenly surged out. It was invisible, piercing through space and time, ignoring all obstructions. It arrived first, entering Gu Li's soul in a single instance. Suddenly, Gu Li let out a muffled groan. His body staggered, and the terrifying power condensed on his fist quickly dissipated. His face instantly became incomparably pale. His primordial spirit had already suffered heavy injuries, and his head felt like it was going to split apart. He was in extreme pain, and the world in his eyes was spinning. Chu Jian was one of the 3 most powerful people in the martial soul lineage. His martial soul force was extremely powerful. Regular Grand Primes really could not endure his martial soul force. You're only a first heavenly layer Grand Prime, yet you're so arrogant. Killing you is far too easy. Chu Jian snorted coldly. In a flash, he appeared in front of Gu Li. Wielding his sword, he directly chopped off Gu Li's head. Spurt! Blood sprayed as a head flew high into the air. Gu Li basically could not put up any resistance, having been beheaded by Chu Jian in a single stroke. Gu Li! Luo Mantian and He Dao cried out. They paled in fright and immediately flew over with lightning speed to save him. Things happened too fast. They didn't even have time to react before Gu Li's head was chopped off. This was too shocking. It was too unbelievable. However, as long as a Grand Prime's soul remained, they would not truly die. Gu Li had only lost his head. His soul remained. However, his soul still had not recovered from Chu Jian's martial soul force attack. Swish! With a flash, Chu Jian stabbed out a second time. The sharp tip of the sword struck Gu Li's forehead, piercing his entire head. Arg! This time, Gu Li finally could not help but cry out miserably. This was a cry from his soul. His soul had been pierced by Chu Jian's sword, and it slowly dispersed. The ancestor of the heaven-shaking sect, Gu Li, had died. The expressions of the Grand Primes of the 4 Symbols Alliance changed drastically when they personally witnessed Gu Li's death. All of them widened their eyes as they stared at the dead soul on Chu Jian's sword. Their hearts churned. The Lord of the Heavens, Ling Peak, Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji were completely stunned at that moment. They seemed to have been petrified. That was a Grand Prime, an existence who stood at the apex of a plane. An expert who could shake up the cloud plane with just a stomp of his foot had died, just like that. They found this hard to believe. At this moment, 2 more grunts rang out. They came from Luo Mantian and He Dao. The 2 of them wanted to save Gu Li, but not only did they fail to save him, but they even froze up halfway as their faces changed drastically. Han Zong and Yu Chao had used their martial soul force to injure Luo Mantian and He Dao's souls. Afterwards, Han Zong and Yu Chao shot towards Luo Mantian and He Dao at the same time. They had a short conversation with Jianchen, so they had completely understood the situation on the cloud plane. They knew who their enemies were. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and do something. Gong Ji called out and took the initiative to assist them. They had already lost Gu Li, so Luo Mantian and He Dao could not die. Otherwise, the advantage that the 4 Symbols Alliance had managed to salvage after so much difficulty would be gone. Moreover, now that Jianchen had the martial soul lineage behind him, the 4 Symbols Alliance needed experts like Luo Mantian and He Dao even more if they wanted to fend them off. Boom! With a deafening sound, powerful ripples of energy wreaked havoc in the sea of stars as a storm. Gong Ji had already arrived beside Luo Mantian and clashed with Han Zong, stopping him from killing Luo Mantian. Wu Lu basically struck out at the same time as Gong Ji. He arrived before He Dao in a flash and clashed with him. At the same time he called out, "Martial soul lineage, Jianchen has offended the young Star Lord. He's someone the young Star Lord wants to kill. If you continue to protect Jianchen, you'll be opposing the Star Brilliance Mountain and becoming enemies with the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. You better consider the consequences carefully. Ha 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 ha, let alone the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. So what if we become enemies with Grand Exalts and the entire Saints world? Our martial soul lineage is not cowardly." Chu Jian laughed aloud fearlessly. "Young Star Lord, let's retreat. The two ninth heavenly layer chaotic primes from the Four Symbols Alliance were stern. They blocked the young Star Lord and protected him as they retreated quickly. Chapter 2666. Martial Soul Force really is powerful. It's no wonder that the martial soul lineage is known to be invincible among the same level of cultivation. With such unbelievable power, it'll probably be very difficult to find an opponent who can rival you at the same level of cultivation. Luo Mantion had already recovered from the attack from Hun Zhang's martial soul force. He was extremely stern. As soon as he thought about what he had gone through earlier, he shivered inside. This was because he had actually become dazed from the attack of martial soul force earlier. His perception of the outside world had plummeted. Even though it was just a few seconds, a battle between experts like them could determine life and death in a single breath. What made him feel even more terrified was that he was unable to resist martial soul force at all. The only thing he could do was become a living target and forcefully endure the attack. Everyone be careful. Don't fight them one-on-one. Gong Ji called out loudly. Gong Ji called out. She was also extremely stern. Even though her opponent was only a ninth heavenly layer chaotic prime, the threat he posed to her was far greater than grand primes. The only thing that made Gong Ji feel at ease was that the people of the martial soul lineage seemed to be able to affect the souls of grand primes by concentrating their martial soul force on a single person, causing them to become dazed or injure their souls. If the martial soul force was dispersed and used against two grand primes simultaneously, there would be nothing to worry about. It would not affect them too much. At that moment, everyone from the Four Symbols Alliance aside from the Gentle Breeze ancestor took action. Coupled with Luo Mantion and He Dao, a total of 6 grand primes engaged in an intense battle with Hun Zong, Chu Jian, and Yu Chao. Hun Zong, Chu Jian, and Yu Chao's battle prowess was truly astounding. They were unrivaled. As ninth heavenly layer chaotic primes, they managed to fight evenly against the grand primes of the Four Symbols Alliance. Although they did not gain the upper hand, they were not at a disadvantage either. Moreover, they would send out strands of martial soul force from time to time, causing a lot of trouble for the grand primes of the Four Symbols Alliance. God damn it, there's something strange about their power. Every time I clash with them, my soul will be impacted by a strange power. I can't isolate it at all. We can't prolong the battle with them, or we'll definitely be the ones to suffer if it drags on. We need to end it quickly, Zhang Hu called out. His face was extremely ugly and it was slightly pale. Zhang, who was someone who had just broken through to Grand Prime recently. In terms of the toughness of his soul, he was the weakest among all the Grand Primes, so he was the first to feel the pressure. Boom! With a great boom, Gong Ji had actually been blown away by Hun Zhang's punch. Her old body was blown away like a meteor as blood dripped from the corner of her mouth. Impossible, this is impossible. Gong Ji was absent-minded. Her eyes were wide open as she stared the bastard in disbelief. Why, you're clearly only a chaotic prime. So why is your energy so tremendous? This has clearly surpassed the level of chaotic primes. Gong Ji cried out as if she had lost her mind. He's still a chaotic prime, but his cultivation has already become a grand prime. This defies common sense. Luo Mantion was stunned as well. He stared at Hun Zong blankly. Cultivation referred to the comprehension of the laws of the world. As for cultivation, it referred to the level of energy accumulated in a powerhouse's body. The cultivation of all cultivators in the saints' world would be limited by their cultivation level. Only when their cultivation level increased would their cultivation level increase. As a result, cultivation level would always be in front of cultivation level. Existences whose cultivation surpassed their cultivation could appear, but there had never been a case where cultivation surpassed cultivation. This was because this was the law of the world, the order. However, Hun Zong had clearly overturned this order. The martial soul lineage is actually so powerful. The heavily injured Lord of the Heavens, Link Peak, Lian Wuji, Zhou Zhidao and Tong Wuming were shocked as well. Even though they had heard about the martial soul lineage before, it was only limited to the records and rumors. In reality, they could not help but doubt it. However, only now did they truly become astounded after witnessing the power of the martial soul lineage with their own eyes. Let's do it as well. This time, we have to make the Four Symbols Alliance pay a heavy price, Tong Wuming said coldly as killing intent surged in his eyes. The arrival of the martial soul lineage had turned the situation around once more. They gained the upper hand once again. Luo Mantian and He Dao, those two traitors. We have to cut them to pieces. We have to make them pay a heavy price for what they have done. Zhou Zhidao gritted his teeth. He hated the two of them to the bone. Humph! Old man wants their souls to burn in roaring flames for 10,000 years. He wants them to die in pain, Lian Wuji said sternly. Jianqin had already collected Gu Li's corpse. As soon as he heard what the three experts of the Righteous Alliance said, he immediately said, "Seniors, please rest up for now. Our martial soul lineage can deal with the Four Symbols Alliance." With that, Jianqin flew towards the martial soul mountain nearby. On the martial soul mountain, the fourth senior brother Yun Ziding, the fifth senior sister Su Qi, the sixth senior brother Bai Rafeng, and the seventh senior brother Aoyama stood side by side. They paid close attention to the battle below. They did not take part, as the battle below involved grand primes. Even though there were chaotic primes among them, they were nowhere close to Han Zong, Chu Jian, and Yu Chao. Greetings, fourth senior brother, fifth senior sister, sixth senior brother, and seventh senior brother. Jianqin clasped his fist and bowed towards the seniors. There's no need to be so polite, eighth junior brother. I saw you collect the corpse of the dead Grand Prime earlier. Are the corpses your fifth senior sister gave you not enough? Yun Ziding asked. Naturally, the more corpses the better. I need more of them, said Jianqin. That's not a problem. The corpses of primordial realm experts are easy. Aren't there a few more down there? Eighth junior brother, form the martial soul array with us and assist the three seniors. We'll try to kill one more person, said the fifth senior sister Su Qi. Even though she was a woman, she did not hold back at all. All right. Jianqin had already learnt about the martial soul array. It was only one of the many formations on the martial soul mountain. Afterwards, Jianqin, Yun Ziding, Su Qi, Bai Rafeng, and Aoyama immediately formed a formation. They formed the martial soul array with the five of them. As soon as the martial soul array was formed, Jianqin immediately experienced a wondrous feeling. It was as if his power, soul, martial soul force, and even his vital energies had fused with his four seniors perfectly, becoming indistinguishable from each other. Chapter 2667. With the five of us combined, I'm afraid we can rival Senior Chu Jian and Senior Yu Chao. Jianqin was greatly shocked when he sensed the combined strength of the five of them. Among the five of them, Yun Ziding was a fifth heavenly layer chaotic prime. Su Qi was a third heavenly layer chaotic prime. Bai Rafeng was a ninth heavenly layer chaotic prime, and Aoyama had only become an infinite prime recently. If it were other cultivators at the same level of cultivation, it would have been impossible for them to reach the level of a ninth heavenly layer chaotic prime, even if they combined their strength through the formation. This was because the difference between a fifth heavenly layer chaotic prime and a ninth heavenly layer chaotic prime was not just in terms of quantity. There was also a difference in quality. However, the martial soul lineage could easily achieve this through the martial soul array. Eighth junior, who do we kill? Aoyama's voice rang out in Jianqin's head. Once they were in the martial soul array, the five of them no longer needed to communicate with words. Their minds were connected, so they only needed to think, and the other four could sense it. It was extremely profound. Let's pick the weaker ones first. It'll be much easier to kill the weaker ones. We might not be able to kill the stronger ones in a single strike, said Jianqin. Severing one finger was better than injuring all 10. Moreover, the corpses of grand primes were just too tempting to him. This was because just a single corpse of an expert like that would be immeasurably helpful to the growth of the immortal devouring orchid. The growth of the immortal devouring orchid would only require more and more corpses of experts, and the requirements for cultivation would become greater and greater. He needed to collect as many as possible. With just the 5 of you, even with the martial soul array, you can only injure grand primes at most. Killing them will be rather difficult. Use your martial soul force to keep the other person busy. Leave the killing to me, said Chu Jian. Chu Jian's voice rang out. He fought against Zheng, Hu, and Chang Fengyin from the Four Symbols Alliance, all by himself. With his advantage in martial soul force, he temporarily locked in a stalemate with Zheng, Hu, and Chang Fengyin. Jianqin glanced down. He had some understanding of the peak experts of the Four Symbols Alliance. He said, "The 2 of them are Chang Fengyin and Zheng Hu. Chang Fengyin has been a grand prime for many years now, while it's said that Zheng Hu has only broken through recently. Kill Zheng Hu first." Jianqin's eyes were cold. He showed no pity at all. Now he had completely fallen out with the Four Symbols Alliance and become enemies with them. Coupled with the young Star Lord, his relationship with the Four Symbols Alliance had developed to a point where only one of them could survive. "Let's restrain Chang Fengyin and buy time for second senior brother." Fourth senior brother Yun Ziding immediately shouted. In the next moment, the martial soul array shone brightly. Energy on par with 9th heavenly layer chaotic primes erupted, forming a dazzling pillar of energy that shot towards Chang Fengyin. Chang Fengyin frowned. He was extremely stern. Even though he did not take the attacks of mere 9th heavenly layer chaotic primes seriously as a grand prime, he dared not underestimate the martial soul lineage at all. He wore God artifact armor as energy surged around him. The power of laws revolved around him as he directly extended a finger. The finger contained the terrifying power of a grand prime. It seemed to be compatible with the world, possessing profound truths of the world. This was the terror of grand primes. Their comprehension of the ways of the world had reached an extremely deep level. Just a casual attack from them possessed the might of the world. Boom! With a great sound, the attacks from Jianqin and the others were dispersed by Chang Fengyun's finger. Even though they were 9th heavenly layer chaotic primes when they worked together, they were on par with Chu Jian and Yu Chao. However, they were still lacking when compared to Chu Jian and Yu Chao. However, Chang Fengyun had only dispersed the energy. He was unable to do anything about the martial soul force within the energy. The remaining martial soul force seemed to have fused with space. It was invisible, impossible to see with the naked eye, and impossible to capture with the senses of the soul. It shot into Chang Fengyun's head like a hot knife through butter. Even with Chang Fengyun's God artifact armor, he was unable to stop the martial soul force from entering his head. Chang Fengyin Feng's expression changed slightly. At that moment, there was a slight delay in his attack. Martial soul-destroying technique. On the mountain soul, the powers of Jianqin and the others all gathered on Yun Ziding. With a thought, Jianqin and the others immediately felt their martial soul force plummet. The soul-destroying technique had already been used, turning into an invisible sword that stabbed into Chang Fengyun's soul in a single instance. This time the martial soul force attack was several times more powerful than before. Chang Fengyun immediately grunted. He felt like his soul had been pierced by needles, giving him a splitting headache. Yunqi knew that the situation was bad. If Chu Jian attacked him at a time like this, he would be in life-threatening danger. Without any hesitation, he immediately retreated rapidly, pulling away from Chu Jian. He planned on continuing after his soul recovered. With Chang Fengyun's departure, only Zheng who remained to fight Chu Jian. Without the other person keeping you busy, you won't be able to fight back at all. Killing you is as easy as flipping my hand, Chu Jian said coldly. Chu Jian coldly spoke. His eyes abruptly darkened, as though they were 2 black holes in the universe. A terrifying energy was contained within. Zhang, whose face changed drastically when he saw Chu Jian's eyes. He knew that this was what martial soul force looked like, and it was not a regular attack either. However, even if Zhang who sensed it, it was too late. Ignoring the fact that he could not block martial soul force at all, Chu Jian could use martial soul force with a single thought. By the time Zhang who noticed Chu Jian's eyes, Chu Jian had already struck out with martial soul force, arriving in an instant. Immediately, Zhang Hu grunted. His body shook violently as the pain from his soul was unbearable. He temporarily lost his senses of the outside world. Swish! At the same time there was a flash of light, and Chu Jian's sword stabbed out with lightning speed, piercing Zhang Hu's head. Zhang, who had been annihilated in body and soul. Chu Jian flicked his sword and directly tossed Zhang Hu's corpse towards the martial soul mountain, before continuing towards Chang Fengyin. Zhang, who is actually dead. Chang Fengyin gradually recovered. He stared at Zhang, whose corpse blankly, as cold sweat covered his forehead. God damn it! Gong Ji, Wu Lu, and the others all cursed inside. With Zhang Hu's death, they had lost another peak expert. The scales of victory gradually shifted away from them. On the other hand, Luo Mantian and He Dao were extremely solemn. They looked at Zhang, whose corpse, without making a sound. Let's retreat. The gentle breeze, ancestor, sighed gently. At that moment, his face was filled with worry. He stared at Zhou Zhidao, Tong Wuming, and Lian Wuji, who had yet to take action as well. He turned around and left. Gong Ji, Wu Lu, and Chang Fengyin also knew that the current situation was disadvantageous to them. The three of them no longer lingered on the battle, retreating without any hesitation. Luo Mantian and He Dao looked at each other. They gritted their teeth and could only retreat with everyone else. However, they did not return to the God's Fallen clan or the Taoist sect of emergence. Instead, they directly went to the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance. At the same time, all the formations in the headquarters were activated, unleashing their greatest defenses. The entire Four Symbols Alliance was on high alert. Chapter 2668. The gentle breeze ancestor, Gong Ji Wu Lu, and Chang Fengyin of the Four Symbols Alliance stood together with Luo Mantian and He Dao, who had defected from the Righteous Alliance. Every single one of them was a legendary figure on the cloud plane. Many cultivators would never be able to see them in their entire lives. Their every word and action could influence the entire cloud plane. At this moment, there were 6 Grand Primes, representing more than half of the peak experts on the cloud plane. They all stood within the protective formation, sternly as they stared into the distance. There was a sliver of worry on their faces that was extremely rare to them. Sigh, we've already entered a dead end. If we don't have any external help, our Four Symbols Alliance won't be able to survive this. Gong Ji Wu Lu, are you satisfied with how things have developed now? The gentle breeze ancestor let out a long sigh and said sternly. His voice was filled with blame. He did not agree with Gong Ji and Wu Lu's actions in the first place. Now that the situation had developed like this, it could be said that all of this was caused by the two of them. The gentle breeze ancestor said nothing about Luo Mantian and He Dao. Even though they were once enemies and their enmity was very difficult to resolve, their Four Symbols Alliance really did need the two of them right now. Gentle breeze, there's no point in looking into this now that things have developed like this. None of us thought that Jianchen would actually be a member of the martial soul lineage. Moreover, the martial soul lineage's battle prowess seems to be even greater than the rumors. The 3 chaotic primes are just too terrifying, Gong Ji said emotionlessly. Gong Ji said emotionlessly. She gazed into the distance where the martial soul lineage resided. Fear and fear appeared in the depths of her eyes. It was not just her. In reality, all the peak experts on the cloud plane were quite frightened by the terrifying battle prowess of the martial soul lineage. 9th heavenly layer chaotic primes were actually able to kill Grand Primes so easily. In just a short amount of time, 2 Grand Primes had died. This was just too shocking. If it were not for the fact that it was happening right before their eyes, they would never have believed it. Young Star-Lord, you've seen it too. With the addition of the martial soul lineage, our Four Symbols Alliance is no longer their opponent. We can only rely on you now, young Star-Lord, Gongji said to the young Star-Lord with a hint of pleading. The Gentle Breeze ancestor, Chongfengyan, Wu Lu, He Dao, and Luo Mantian all looked at the young Star-Lord. Indeed, in the current situation, their Four Symbols Alliance was at an absolute disadvantage. Just the martial soul lineage was enough to make them struggle to fend them off, let alone the fact that the Righteous Alliance had Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji. Their only hope right now was the young Star-Lord. Fortunately, I've succeeded. I've already killed a 2nd Grand Prime. 8th Junior, take care of the corpse. Chu Jian laughed aloud. With a flick of his sword, Zheng Hu's corpse directly flew into the Martial Soul Mountain. The Martial Soul array on the illusionary Martial Soul Mountain had already stopped. Jianqin caught Zheng Hu's corpse with a single hand. He secretly rejoiced when he sensed the terrifying power within. He had never thought that he would obtain the corpses of 2 Grand Primes so quickly. This would increase the immortal devouring orchid's strength by a lot. These are their space rings. Seniors, I'll leave these 2 space rings to you. Jianchen removed Gu Li and Zheng Hu's space rings and handed them over. Regular Grand Primes probably don't have anything that can catch our attention. You 5 can have a look and see if there's anything you need, said Jianchen. Han Zong, Chu Jian, and Yu Chao set foot on the Martial Soul Mountain. They did not even look through the space rings before handing them to Yun Ziding, Su Qi, Bai Rafeng, and Aoyama. All right, I won't hold back then. Yun Ziding chuckled. He accepted the space rings and checked through them. There are quite a lot of colored divine crystals in there. I've taken a portion of them and a few materials. You can split the rest among the 4 of you. Afterwards, Su Qi, Bai Rafeng, and Aoyama each took what they needed. In the end, they gave the rest to Jianchen. The 5 of them split the treasures of the 2 Grand Primes just like that. Jianchen did not check what was left in there. He directly stowed the 2 space rings away. Thank you for your assistance, or our Four Symbols Alliance would have been doomed this time. The Lord of the Heavens, Link Peak, Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji arrived before the Martial Soul Mountain and clasped their fists. Even though the strongest experts of the Martial Soul lineage were only chaotic primes, they did not dare to underestimate them at all. They treated them extremely carefully. Suddenly, a powerful pulse of energy attracted Jianchen's attention on the cloud plane. Jianchen was currently in outer space, and the cloud plane was a flat piece of land that hovered in outer space. As a result, he could see the 5 regions on the cloud plane with a single glance. He discovered that an intense battle had erupted in the eastern, northern, and central regions. The terrifying ripples of energy actually formed visible ripples, wreaking havoc in the 2 regions as storms. Jianchen could tell with a single glance where the battle in the northern region had erupted. It was where the God's Fallen clan resided. You're moving against the God's Fallen clan? Jianchen asked. The light in his eyes flickered as he was eager to try. The God's Fallen clan, the Taoist sect of emergence, and the heav-shaking sect had betrayed the Righteous Alliance. We naturally won't spare them. Lian Wuji gritted his teeth. That's right. Luo Mantian and He Dao will pay a heavy price for their betrayal. We'll purge the God's Fallen clan, the heav-shaking sect, and the Taoist sect of emergence. We'll wipe them all out, Zhou Zhidao said murderously. This time, the sudden betrayal of Luo Mantian and the others had almost caused them to fall into a bottomless abyss. As a result, they all gritted their teeth in hatred towards the 3 of them. Peak Lord, how are your wounds? Jianchen looked at the Peak Lord of the Heavens, Link Peak, and frowned. I'm fine for now. I can still suppress the power of the curse for now. You go deal with the 3 clans first. The Peak Lord waved his hand and said, rather weakly, "All right then, let's deal with the God's Fallen clan, the Taoist sect of emergence, and the Heav-shaking sect first. There's no need to show mercy this time." Jianqin immediately flew towards the northern region. He was impatient, as if he was even more eager to destroy the three organizations than the Righteous Alliance. The Taoist sect of emergence, the Heav-shaking sect, and the God's Fallen clan are all protected by powerful formations. The great elders of our clans will not be able to get through them. We'll need to do it ourselves. Tong Wuming looked down at where the three clans were and said to Lian Wuji and Zhou Zhidao. Afterwards, the three of them split up and headed towards the three organizations. At the same time, a young boy sat on the roof of an inn in boredom in the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire in the southern region of the Cloud Plain. If Jianqin were here, he would definitely recognize the boy. He was the boy he had met when he went to the Myriad Bone Guild. On the surface, he seemed like an ordinary child of a farmer, but his strength was unfathomable. The 9 Brilliant Star Lord probably wants to use his foster son to eliminate Jianqin. However, he overestimates his foster son's abilities too much. Unless he uses the power of the Star Brilliance Plane or personally makes arrangements, it'll be impossible for his foster son to eliminate Jianqin. However, if he personally makes arrangements and interferes too much, there'll naturally be more traces. The 9 Brilliance Star Lord probably doesn't have the courage to do that. Or once the Inata Grand Exalt divines the heavenly secrets and learns the truth. If he destroys the Inata Grand Exalt's fruit of ways, let alone the 9 Brilliant Star Lord, even the Blood Tier Grand Exalt will suffer. I don't dare to imagine just how terrifying an enraged Inata Grand Exalt will be. A fruit appeared in the heartless child's hand. He ate it as he looked at the endless stream of people on the streets below. He murmured, since Jianqin is a fruit of ways, he'll die in the end. However, he can't die on the Cloud Plain. The heartless child suddenly looked at outer space when he reached there. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce through the endless space and see the depths of the universe. Chapter 2669. Extremely far away from the Cloud Plain, there was a meteor that was not very large. It hovered there silently as if it had fused with the stars. And on this meteorite there was a man in green clothes. His figure was like a ghost as he stood there silently. He concealed all of his presence, making him seem like he had fused with outer space. Even standing close to him would be very difficult to sense his existence. The azure-robed man was the renowned Azure Pung King of the Saints' World. At the same time, he was one of the 4 heavenly kings of the Lone Heaven Plain, the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance. He currently stood on the meteor with his arms behind his back. His eyes were extremely sharp as he stared at the piece of land that was only the size of a sesame seed. The piece of land was the Cloud Plain, one of the 49 great plains of the Saints' World. Because it was just too far away, the colossal Cloud Plain had shrunk in the eyes of the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance. The 9 Brilliant Star Lord has already announced that he is going into seclusion to break through to Grand Exalt. Yet his adopted son has come to the Cloud Plain to cause trouble, offending even Jianqin. It looks like the 9 Brilliant Star Lord didn't tell his adopted son that the Inata Grand Exalt was still alive before he entered seclusion, causing his adopted son to even provoke the heavenly palace of Bishing. The heavenly king of Azure Brilliance murmured as he stared at the Cloud Plain. Even though he was extremely far away from the Cloud Plain, the heavenly king of Azure Brilliance could see everything that happened there clearly. The heavenly king of Azure Brilliance seemed to think of something, and his lips suddenly curled into an extremely strange smile. He said softly, "I wonder what kind of expression the 9 Brilliant Star Lord will have once he emerges from seclusion and learns that Jianqin has actually died to his adopted son. It's just that his adopted son is far too weak. He won't be able to kill Jianqin by himself. Jianqin is a thorn in my heart as well. I'd like to kill him as soon as possible, but I can't do anything about him because of the Inata Grand Exalt. However, Since the 9 brilliant Star Lord's adopted son has fallen out with him, why don't I just go with the flow? The heavenly king of azure brilliance's smile became even more strange and sinister. In the northern region of the cloud plain, the entire God's Fallen clan was enveloped by a powerful formation. Energy surged within the formation, shining with blinding light. The endless energy pushed the defenses of the formation to the limit. Outside the formation, many experts hovered in the air. With 4 old men in the lead, they continuously unleashed powerful attacks. They continuously bombarded the protective formation of the God's Fallen clan. Deafening booms rang out incessantly, causing the sky to crumble and the earth to shatter. The experts who attacked the God's Fallen family were all from the Sea family. Ever since the martial soul lineage appeared and gained the upper hand, Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji gave orders to launch devastating attacks against the God's Fallen clan, the Taoist sect of emergence, and the Heaven-shaking sect. As a result, the Sea family had basically sent all their elites this time. The 4 great, chaotic prime great elders arrived at the God's Fallen clan with a group of experts as quickly as they could. The Heaven-shaking sect and the Taoist sect of emergence faced the revenge of the Fire God clan and the Cosmic sect, respectively. The protective formation of the God's Fallen clan was personally cast down by Luo Mantian. With our strength, there's no hope for us to get through unless we deplete all the energy in the formation. There's a teleportation formation in the God's Fallen clan. They should be using the teleportation formation to move the fire seed in the clan away. We need to get through the formation as soon as possible, or we'll only be left with an empty sect. The 4 great elders from the Sea family called out. They were secretly worried, but there was nothing they could do about the formation before them. Stand down. Let me do it. Just when the 4 of them were utterly flustered, an old voice rang out. The ancestor of the Sea family, Tong Wuming, appeared before them. Old patriarch, that's great. You actually came. The 4 Sea clan grand elders were overjoyed and saluted one after another. Greetings to the ancestor. All the disciples of the Sea family behind bowed as well. They were overjoyed. Tong Wuming said nothing. He held a metal rod in his hand. As he circulated his energy, a terrifying pressure immediately erupted from the metal rod, devastating. To no surprise, the metal rod was a god artifact. It was a medium-quality god artifact. Tong Wuming directly smashed the protective formation of the God's Fallen clan with his metal rod. With a violent boom, the ground quaked, and a terrifying storm of energy flattened the mountains. A huge crack was ripped open in the space there. The protective formation of the God's Fallen clan flickered, violently flickering. The energy in the formation was being depleted at an extremely shocking rate. However, the protective formation managed to endure Tong Wuming's strike in the end. Tong Wuming did not stop. He swung his rod and continued to attack. Every strike brought with it an earth-shaking ripple of energy. It was extremely powerful, causing the entire ground to shake violently. Various parts of the ground collapsed. After a total of 5 strikes, the protective formation of the God's Fallen clan finally collapsed, revealing the structures hidden by the formation. By now, the God's Fallen clan had already descended into chaos. Many of the disciples fled frantically in fear. They all rushed towards the teleportation formations of the God's Fallen clan. 2 teleportation formations stood in the central square of the God's Fallen clan. The teleportation formations constantly flickered, sending away the talented juniors of the God's Fallen clan. 5 people of various ages hovered in the air above the God's Fallen clan. They gave off surging presences. The 5 of them were all chaotic primes. They were the 5 great elders of the God's Fallen clan. However, the faces of the 5 of them had turned somewhat pale. The 5 of them maintained the formations of the God's Fallen clan. Now that Tong Wuming had shattered the protective formation with absolute strength, the 5 of them were affected as well. I'll go destroy the teleportation formation. One of the great elders of the Tong family called out from behind Tong Wuming and immediately flew towards the teleportation formation. Don't even think about it. The great elder of the God's Fallen clan bellowed out furiously. He was sorrowful, ready to die as he went up to stop him. However, at this moment, space exploded. A huge spatial crack appeared, and a metal rod ripped through the sky, smashing down with devastating power. The great elder of the God's Fallen clan was unable to put up any resistance at all. He was struck in the head by the metal rod, and his soul was wiped out. The person who had struck out was Tong Wuming. With his supreme strength as a Grand Prime, he had personally killed a great elder of the God's Fallen clan. The expressions of the 4 remaining great elders of the God's Fallen clan all changed when they saw this. Tong Wuming, you're a respected senior after all. How can you lower yourself like this and come over to bully us juniors? How can you do something as disgraceful as that? The great elder of the God's Fallen clan, Luo Heping, called out. His face became extremely ugly. If it were just the 4 great elders of the Tong family, they could still charge out, but now that a Grand Prime had struck out, it was impossible for them to survive. In order to prevent the 5 of you from escaping and to reduce the casualties of our Tong family, Old Man can only take action personally, Tong Wuming said calmly. Tong Wuming said calmly. Then he swung the metal rod in his hand and continued to attack the remaining 4 great elders. The difference between chaotic primes and grand primes was just too great. Moreover, the chaotic primes of the God's Fallen clan were not particularly powerful, so they basically could not fight back at all against Tong Wuming. Tong Wuming struck out again and again, showing no mercy. Very soon, he killed off the 4 remaining great elders of the God's Fallen clan. None of them managed to escape. The 4 great elders of the Tong family hunted down the infinite primes of the God's Fallen clan. Chapter 2670. At that moment, the God's Fallen clan was completely powerless before the Tong family because all the Grand Primes and Chaotic Primes of the God's Fallen clan had died. On the other hand, the Tong family adopted a strategy of using strength against weakness. The 4 great elders of the Chaotic Prime clan dealt with the infinite primes of the God's Fallen clan, while the infinite primes of the Tong family dealt with the divine king of the God's Fallen clan. Basically, the people of the God's Fallen clan had to face enemies, an entire major realm of cultivation higher than them. Naturally, they were not their opponents. The battle that erupted in the God's Fallen clan was extremely intense. In a short amount of time, the God's Fallen clan suffered heavy casualties. The 5 dead great elders of the God's Fallen clan had also become highly sought after by the experts of the Sea family. This was because the space rings on their fingers were extremely tempting to the Sea family as well. As a result, one of the 4 chaotic prime great elders of the Sea family specially went to collect the space rings. Luo Heping, I never thought you'd have a day like this. Ha ha ha. The great elder of the Tong family, Tong Xiao, currently gripped Luo Heping's neck and lifted him high into the air as he laughed viciously. He had developed personal grievances with Luo Heping long ago, so he had wanted to kill Luo Heping long ago. However, due to the fact that he and Luo Heping were both members of the upper echelon of 2 peak clans on the Cloud Plain, he could only bury this grievance deep in his heart so as to not affect the relationship between the Tong family and the God's Fallen clan. Now, Luo Heping's corpse was in his hands. Even though he had not killed Luo Heping, he still felt extremely satisfied. Luo Heping, although I can't kill you personally, I can destroy your corpse personally. I want you to be reduced to ashes. Tong Xiao laughed loudly. His eyes shone with cold light. With that, he wanted to destroy Luo Heping's corpse. However, at this moment, a streak of light flew over, and Genshin appeared beside Tong Xiao. He clasped his fist at Tong Xiao and said, Senior, this is the corpse of a chaotic prime after all. If you destroy it like this, it'll be far too much of a pity. Why don't you leave it to me? Tong Xiao's face immediately sank when he heard that. However, when he saw that it was Jianqin, his gloominess immediately vanished. He immediately changed his attitude and said amiably with a smile, "So it's the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan. All right, since you've spoken, I'll leave Luo Heping's corpse to the patriarch." Tong Xiao said that he paused. After a moment of hesitation, he passed Luo Heping's space ring. He left Luo Heping's space, Luo Heping's space. I'll leave Luo Heping's space as well. Tong Xiao was one of the 4 chaotic primes of the Tong family. He was an existence that stood above everyone else in the Tong family. However, he did not dare to put on any airs before Jianqin despite his great status. Instead, he was extremely polite. This was because the chaotic primes on the cloud plane were able to witness the battle in outer space clearly. As a result, all the chaotic primes and even some infinite primes on the cloud plane deeply understood just how great the power behind Jianqin was. "I only want his corpse. You can keep the space ring," said Jianqin. He did not act arrogantly at all. Instead, he picked up Luo Heping's corpse and tossed it into the water cloud hall he carried with him. "My friend Jianqin seems to require a large number of corpses. All members of the Tong family, listen up. Do not destroy a single body. I want all the dead clansmen of the God's Fallen clan to be preserved, regardless of their strength." Tong Wuming's voice rang out. Immediately, all the people of the Tong family became much more careful. As they killed their enemies, they did their best to preserve their bodies. "Thank you, Senior." Jianqin beamed and thanked him in a hurry. Hee. There's no need to be so polite, Jianqin. If you really want to thank someone, it should be our Tong family thanking you. If it wasn't for you, our Tong family would have faced this disaster. Tong Wuming arrived beside Jianqin and smiled. He seemed like a benevolent old man. Afterwards, Jianqin collected quite a few of the corpses of the 4 remaining chaotic primes of the God's Fallen clan. Jianqin did not even waste the corpses of the dead infinite primes. He stored them all in the water cloud hall for the future growth of the immortal devouring orchid. Of course, Jianqin did not go too far. He only collected their corpses and left all the space rings to the Tong family. After collecting the space rings of the 5 chaotic primes of the God's Fallen clan, Tong Xiao turned his attention to the infinite primes of the God's Fallen clan as well. He began a massacre. There were 20 to 30 infinite primes in the God's Fallen clan. Even though there were quite a lot of them, they died one after another under the attacks of the 4 chaotic primes of the Tong family. Even if there were 9th heavenly layer infinite primes among them, they were still unable to escape death. Tong family, are you really going to ignore our many years of friendship and massacre our God's Fallen clan? An 8th heavenly layer infinite prime of the God's Fallen clan roared out furiously. His face was filled with reluctance and despair. No one paid any attention to him, but no one pitied him either. Many experts saw what happened in outer space clearly. If it were not for the sudden appearance of the martial soul lineage, it would not have been the God's Fallen clan that would have been wiped out. Instead, it would have been the Tong family. Immortal devouring orchid, the corpses here are enough for you to eat your fill. Go. This is a rare opportunity. Jianqin hovered in the air as he summoned the immortal devouring orchid. The immortal devouring orchid swayed gently as it sent a mental pulse of excitement to Jianqin. Afterwards, it immediately landed on the ground, and its countless tendrils began to grow rapidly, becoming longer and thicker. They all sank into the ground. The immortal devouring orchid remained in the God's Fallen clan, just like that. All of its tendrils were hidden underground, spreading rapidly in all directions with the main body as the center. It had basically covered the entire God's Fallen clan. Jianqin could clearly see with the senses of his soul that the immortal devouring orchid's tendrils were like a huge net, enveloping every inch of the God's Fallen clan. The blood that had seeped into the ground was constantly being absorbed by the tendrils. At the same time, many tendrils emerged from the ground. Like sharp thorns, they stabbed into the corpses immediately. Immediately, a strange scene occurred. Many godhood cultivators and cultivators below godhood in the God's Fallen clan began to wither. Their lifeless corpses on the ground were drying up at a speed visible to the naked eye. All the blood and energy left in the corpses were being sucked dry, turning them into dried corpses in a short period of time. There were just far too many corpses in the God's Fallen clan, and the number was constantly increasing. As a result, the immortal devouring orchid did not directly devour the corpses. Instead, it only absorbed their essence. With your current level of cultivation, you'll reach your limit very soon if you devour the corpses of divine kings. Keep the corpses of divine kings for now. Devour the corpses of overgods, and those below overgods first. Jianqin said to the immortal devouring orchid, secretly. He did not sit around either. He paid close attention to the battle in the sky. Whenever an infinite prime from the God's Fallen clan died, he would immediately collect the corpse and leave all the space rings to the Tong family. Chapter 2671. This time, the immortal devouring orchid will definitely reach the primordial realm. Even if it doesn't devour the corpses of the divine king, infinite primes, or chaotic primes, just the corpses of overgods, and those below will be enough for it to break through. Genshin thought as he began to look forward to it. The God's Fallen clan was a peak clan on the cloud plane. They possessed a history of 1,000,000 years. After such a long period of expansion, the number of people in the God's Fallen clan had already reached several 100,000 or even over 1,000,000. Even though there were not a lot of people above the Divine King and Divine King realm, there were quite a few overgods, gods, and deities below the Divine King. There were even more origin realm and sainthood experts. If all of these people were added together, it would be equivalent to a few, or even over a dozen, infinite primes. If it were the corpses of infinite primes, the immortal devouring orchid would need some time to digest them, but the sainthood, origin realm, and godhood experts can be digested in a single moment. Although the energy within these weaker cultivators is nowhere near as great as infinite primes, there's a lot of it. The immortal devouring orchid will undergo a qualitative change once it reaches a certain amount, Jianqin thought. He hovered in the air and observed the battle in the God's Fallen clan as he paid close attention to the immortal devouring orchid, just in case something happened to it. After all, the immortal devouring orchid was only at the Divine King realm. If a primordial realm expert attacked it, it would be a disaster. This plant dares to devour the clansmen of our God's Fallen clan. You deserve to die. An infinite prime elder of the God's Fallen clan bellowed out furiously. He immediately used a god tier battle skill and knocked back an infinite prime of the Tong family who fought against him. Afterwards, he charged towards the immortal devouring orchid with murderous intent. However, as soon as he moved, an old man blocked his path and sent a palm strike towards him with terrifying energy. He was a great elder of the Tong family, a chaotic prime. In the end, the elder of the God's Fallen clan was obliterated before he could even approach the immortal devouring orchid. Patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, I'll leave this corpse to you. The great elder of the Tong family directly tossed the corpse to Jianqin. Elder Luoshi is dead as well. Basically, all the mid and late infinite primes of our God's Fallen clan have died. Only a few early infinite primes and I are still holding on bitterly. In another battlefield of the God's Fallen clan, a young man was covered in blood. His body was covered in terrifying wounds. He was currently fighting against an elder of the Yusung family who was clearly stronger than him. He was an infinite prime of the God's Fallen clan, Luo Fei. At this moment, Luo Fei's eyes were filled with despair. The chaotic prime of the Tong family had gone as far as to lower himself and personally kill infinite primes like him. They were unable to fend him off at all. Now that all the stronger infinite primes of the God's Fallen clan had died, the chaotic prime great elder of the Tong family had already set his sights on cultivators at his level, killing them off one by one. Luo Fei knew that he would not be able to live for much longer, as it would be his turn very soon. The Tong family had already sealed off the God's Fallen clan, so they could only enter and leave. It was impossible for them to escape. Go deal with the divine king of the God's Fallen clan. Leave this person to me. A chaotic prime of the Tong family appeared before Luo Fei and stared at him coldly. He said to the elder of the Tong family who fought against Luo Fei, "Yes, great elder. Great elder." The infinite prime from the Tong family bowed politely and immediately flew off. "Ha ha ha! I, Luo Fei, am actually worthy enough for a great elder of the Tong family to take action. Even if I die, I can still be proud of myself." Luo Fei cried out miserably. Luo Fei let out a miserable scream. His face was covered in blood. When he opened his mouth to laugh, blood mixed with bits of his organs flowed out of his mouth. Humph! The great elder of the Tong family was cold. He snorted coldly and stabbed his sword towards Luo Fei. "Stop!" At this moment a voice rang out. The white-robed Tian Shuang flew over from afar, directly entering the God's Fallen clan. She called out to the great elder of the Tong family who was about to kill Luo Fei. The great elder of the Yun clan frowned and suddenly turned his head to look at Tian Shuang. His eyes were cold. Tian Shuang's heart tightened. She immediately returned to her senses and said to Genshin, "Patriarch, can you spare Luo Fei? Although he's a member of the God's Fallen clan, he's not a bad person." "Tian Shuang, is he your friend?" Genshin glanced at Luo Fei. Luo Fei was a third heavenly layer infinite prime. Genshin no longer took an expert at that level seriously. "Luo Fei is an old friend of mine. Moreover, he has helped me many times in the past," Tian Shuang said with a hint of pleading. The great elder of the Tong family who was about to kill Luo Fei stopped when he saw Tian Shuang plead with Genshin. He looked at Genshin from afar as if he was waiting for Genshin's orders. "Since he's your friend, I'll help you this time," said Genshin. Since it was Tian Shuang's request, he naturally would not turn it down. Afterwards, he immediately explained the situation to the great elder of the Tong family. Luo Fei's talent was not particularly great. Someone like him posed no threat to Genshin or the Tong family. "Since the patriarch has spoken, our Tong family won't kill this person." The great elder of the Tong family chuckled. The chaotic prime great elder chuckled and said in an extremely straightforward manner. His attitude towards Genshin was completely different from how he treated Tian Shuang. "Tian Shuang, why did you save me?" Luo Fei coughed up blood as his eyes dimmed. He was dejected. The calamity that the God's Fallen clan was facing right now was just too great a blow to him. At the same time, the immortal devouring orchid that had taken root in the ground stopped absorbing blood. Its huge flower was enveloped by a layer of dense, red mist as it pulsed with powerful pulses. In such a short amount of time, the immortal devouring orchid had already absorbed the blood, vital energies, and vitality of several 100,000 clansmen of the God's Fallen clan. Even though the strongest clansmen were only over gods, the amount of energy they had accumulated was equivalent to several infinite primes. This was the limit of the immortal devouring orchid. Furthermore, there was a considerable number of corpses that the immortal devouring orchid was unable to absorb. It could only allow the lifeless corpses to lie on the ground in a disorderly manner and allow the fresh blood to gather into a trickle. It should be enough this time. Genshin stared at the immortal devouring orchid as he murmured to himself. Afterwards, he arrived before the immortal devouring orchid in a flash, personally watching over it. In just a few hours, the battle of the God's Fallen clan had completely come to an end. The God's Fallen clan that stood at the apex of the cloud plain had officially vanished from the cloud plain. Genshin did not collect the spoils. Instead, he watched over the immortal devouring orchid quietly. The members of the Tong family had already gone to collect the scattered corpses of the Divine King. Patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, all the corpses of the Divine King in the God's Fallen clan are in this space ring. There are over 400 of them. One of the 4 great elders of the Tong family, Tong Shao, personally passed the space ring with the Divine King's corpses to Genshin. Genshin's eyes lit up when he heard that. He was overjoyed. Over 400 corpses of the Divine King, over 20 corpses of infinite primes, and 5 corpses of chaotic primes. He had truly benefited greatly from his trip to the God's Fallen clan this time. This time, you've reaped all the benefits. Immortal devouring orchid, I've spent a lot of effort nurturing you. Don't disappoint me. Jianqin stared at the immortal devouring orchid and said gently. Chapter 2672. All right, thank you, Senior. Jianqin was overjoyed. Just the God's Fallen clan alone had benefited so much. If the other 2 clans were included, Jianqin struggled to imagine just how much energy they could store for the immortal devouring orchid. I wonder if the energy of 2 grand primes and the energy of many chaotic primes and infinite primes will be enough for the immortal devouring orchid to reach chaotic prime in a single stroke. Once it reaches chaotic prime, it'll be my greatest assistance, Jianqin thought. He eagerly awaited the arrival of this day. However, he also understood that the immortal devouring orchid would need quite some time to absorb all this energy. Even with sufficient food, breaking through to chaotic prime was not something that could be accomplished in a single day. Junior brother, is it worth it to spend so much effort to nurture this spiritual plant? After all, you're growing far too quickly. It might be useless to you in the end, said a deep voice. A heavy voice rang out. Hanzong, Chu Jian, Yu Chao, and the other members of the martial soul lineage all appeared beside Jianqin. They all studied the immortal devouring orchid. No, it's different. Jianqin shook his head. He placed great importance on the immortal devouring orchid. Chu Jian studied the immortal devouring orchid for a while before saying in thought, this spiritual plant might be able to grow extremely quickly in the early stages, but as its strength constantly increases, it'll become extraordinarily difficult to increase its strength in the future. It might need a very long time before it can reach Grand Prime. After all, the corpses of godhood cultivators are easy to find, so they can provide it with sufficient food in the early stages. However, the corpses of primordial realm experts are difficult to find. Where are you going to find so many corpses of primordial realm experts for it in the future? Thank you for your concern, senior brother. I've actually thought about the problem of its future growth long ago, but I firmly believe that it will definitely reach a peak under my nurturing and become a great assistance to me, Jianqin said firmly. Jianqin said firmly. Since the sword spirits had praised the immortal devouring orchid, it was definitely something extraordinary. Afterwards, the clansmen of the Tong family all retreated after cleaning up the battlefield. Very soon, not a single clansman of the Tong family remained in the territory of the God's Fallen clan. Even Tong Wuming bid farewell to Jianqin in order to find a way to remove the curse on the Lord of the Heavens, Link Peak. In the blink of an eye, the war-ravaged God's Fallen clan fell completely silent. As far as the eye could see, the God's Fallen clan was a mess. All the buildings had been reduced to ruins, and many mountains had been flattened. All the valuable items that could be dismantled had been taken away by the people of the Tong family. However, Jianqin did not leave. After the immortal devouring demonic flower had devoured enough blood essence and essence, it was now on the verge of a breakthrough. He had been guarding the immortal devouring demonic flower. Since the Four Symbols Alliance wants to destroy 8th Junior's clan, I don't think there's any need for the Four Symbols Alliance to continue existing, said Su Qi's second eldest sister. At this moment, the 5th senior sister of the martial soul lineage, Su Qi, said, even though she was an alluring woman, she was no weaker than anyone else when it came to killing. Our martial soul lineage doesn't cause trouble, but that doesn't mean we're afraid of trouble. Since they've come to pick on us, we obviously have to make them pay the price, said the 4th senior, Yun Zitting. 1st senior, 2nd senior, 3rd senior, let's go destroy the Four Symbols Alliance, Aoyama suggested as a cold light flickered through his eyes. The successors of the martial soul lineage had always been as close as brothers. When one of them was in trouble, everyone would come to their aid. As a result, What happened to Jianqin was no longer just a matter of Jianqin. Instead, it involved the entire martial soul lineage. However, the Four Symbols Alliance truly posed no threat to the martial soul lineage. Even with the addition of Luo Mantian and He Dao, the martial soul lineage still did not take them seriously. At this moment, a powerful pulse of energy appeared. The sudden change immediately attracted the attention of the people from the martial soul lineage. The powerful pulse of energy came from the mortal devouring demonic flower. It had finally broken through at the late Divine King realm, reaching the primordial realm. As soon as it reached the primordial realm, the rate at which the immortal devouring demonic flower refined energy skyrocketed. Moreover, the amount of energy it could devour in one go had increased by several times as its strength broke through. The immortal devouring demonic flower's presence skyrocketed as the energy within it became more and more powerful. Jianqin could clearly sense that the essence, blood, vital energies, and essence that the immortal devouring demonic flower had absorbed from the God's fallen clan were vanishing at an unbelievable rate, turning into energy that belonged to the immortal devouring demonic flower. Good. You finally reached the primordial realm. Jianqin smiled. The immortal devouring demonic flower's growth rate had completely exceeded his expectations. If this continued, it might even surpass him if he provided it with enough energy. Suddenly, the huge branch of the immortal devouring demonic flower shuddered gently. In the next moment, all the blood on the ground dried up. The energy within the blood had been absorbed by the immortal devouring demonic flower through its roots in the ground, becoming its nutrients. After absorbing all the blood, all the roots of the flower left the ground one after another. Each of the roots was several miles long, and some were even tens of miles long. They danced in the air, rolling up the corpses on the ground and throwing them into the flower petals. A huge mouth seemed to be hidden within the petals, as if it was a whole new world. After devouring so many corpses, it did not swell at all. In under a minute, the immortal devouring demonic flower had cleaned out the entire God's fallen clan. Afterwards, all the roots began to shrink, and they gradually shrunk to a meter tall. They hovered around Jianqin like ordinary flowers, swaying gently in an extremely intimate manner. Looks like you haven't eaten enough. Let's go to the other two places. Jianqin chuckled. He used the laws of space with the immortal devouring demonic flower and vanished like he had teleported. He hurried towards the hev-shaking sect and the Taoist sect of emergence. The battle between the hev-shaking sect and the Taoist sect of emergence had ended as well. However, Zhou Zhidao and Lian Wuji had received Tong Wuming's orders long ago, so they specially left behind some clansmen to clean up the battlefield. They stored the corpses of the experts into space rings. As a result, when Jianqin arrived at the bases of the Taoist sect of emergence and the hev-shaking sect, he only received space rings. I am the elder of the cosmic sect, Kong Na. Greetings to the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan. All the corpses from the Taoist sect of emergence are in there. There are 4 chaotic primes, 32 regular infinite primes, and many disciples below godhood. I am the elder of the fire god clan, Lian Xian. Greetings to the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan. The ancestor has specially ordered us to give these corpses to the patriarch. The hev-shaking sect has a total of 5 chaotic primes and 30 infinite primes. The people who handed over the space rings were all infinite primes from the cosmic sect and fire god clan. They were all extremely polite to Jianqin, acting extremely humbly. Chapter 2673. With a flip of his hand, a fist-sized azure-blue divine hall appeared in Jianqin's hand. This divine hall was the medium-quality god artifact, the Water Cloud Hall. With a thought from Jianqin, the doors of the Water Cloud Hall slowly opened. An invisible suction seemed to appear from within, sucking in all the space rings in Jianqin's other hand. Immortal Devouring Orchid you can cultivate in seclusion in the Water Cloud Hall for the next few days. If you encounter any problems, you can contact the artifact spirit of the Water Cloud Hall, Jianqin said to the Immortal Devouring Orchid. The immortal devouring orchid swayed gently as if it was nodding at Jianchen. After rubbing against Jianchen intimately, it entered the water cloud hall and vanished. Jianchen stowed the water cloud hall away casually. Now, it was up to the immortal devouring orchid to see just how much it could grow. He was not worried about the immortal devouring orchid being unable to use the space rings at all. This was because the immortal devouring orchid was no less intelligent than humans. Aside from the limitations of its original form, which prevented it from assuming a human form and speaking, it was no weaker than humans in every other aspect. As a matter of fact, it even surpassed them. Opening the space rings was a piece of cake for it. The immortal devouring orchid hovered in the air within the water cloud hull. As it had just reached the primordial realm, it was unable to conceal all of its energy. As a result, it pulsed with the energy of the primordial realm, as well as the pressure of the primordial realm. As for the interspatial rings, they were quietly lying on the ground. Suddenly, the immortal devouring orchid's roots began to grow. Several dozen thin roots reached several dozen meters long in just a few seconds, wrapping around the space rings. In the next moment, the space rings were opened one by one. Corpses flew out one after another, piling up in the water cloud hall. The immortal devouring orchid's branches could not help but tremble when it saw the corpses. It was filled with excitement and joy. "Orchid, Master has said that you should start absorbing the weakest ones." At this moment, a cold voice rang out in the hall. It was the artifact spirit of the water cloud hall. "I understand. Thank you, Master," the immortal devouring orchid replied. The immortal devouring demonic flower replied. Of course, it still couldn't speak, but it could communicate through mental waves. At the same time, the ancestor of the God's Fallen clan, Luo Mantian, and the ancestor of the Taoist sect of emergence, He Dao, stood on a mountain peak. They gazed in the direction of the God's Fallen clan and Taoist sect of emergence through the most powerful formation of the Four Symbols Alliance. Their faces were filled with killing intent. As Grand Primes, they could monitor the entire cloud plane with a single thought. Naturally, they had witnessed the destruction of the God's Fallen clan and Taoist sect of emergence, but they were unable to provide any assistance. As a result, they could only hole up there and watch as the sects and clans that had existed for 1,000,000 years on the cloud plane were destroyed. Tong family, Fire God clan, Cosmic sect, there will be a day when I, Luo Mantian, make you regret this. Luo Mantian gritted his teeth. Luo Mantian gritted his teeth. It was impossible for him not to feel heartache over the destruction of a 1,000,000-year legacy. Even if his clan could be rebuilt, it would take an extremely long time for them to return to their former glory. Don't worry. We have the young star, Lord, on our side. We'll get our revenge sooner or later, He Dao said sternly. Tisk, TSK. If it were up to me, you can't blame them. After all, the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak almost died to your hands. Chang Feng Yan's voice rang out. He was a middle-aged man in purple robes, and he made his way over steadily from afar. Especially you, Luo Mantian. Your dagger really is extraordinary. It actually has the laws of curses from a fourth heavenly layer Grand Prime at the very least. Fortunately, the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak was at the peak of the third heavenly layer, which was why he was able to fend off the power of the curse. If it were a second heavenly layer Grand Prime, he probably wouldn't have been able to last for very long. He would have died to the power of the curse, Chang Fengyin said as he smiled faintly. However, his smile, which seemed very ordinary, became a form of mockery in the eyes of Luo Mantian and He Dao. After all, the two of them had betrayed the clan, and they had even ambushed the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, who trusted them greatly. From a moral point of view, their actions were despicable. Chang Fengyin, you better watch your mouth, or I wouldn't mind fighting you here, Luo Mantian immediately replied coldly. This is the territory of our Four Symbols Alliance. Are you sure you want to fight me here? Chang Fengyin chuckled as if he did not take Luo Mantian seriously at all. Their righteous alliance and the Four Symbols Alliance had clashed for so many years, so their grievances ran deep. It was not something that could be resolved so easily. Even though Luo Mantion had joined them now and stood on the same side, it was still difficult for them to get along. Enough, Chang Fengyin. Now is not the time for internal strife. Xu Yunfeng wants us to go to the Longevity Hall. It's time for us to discuss how we should deal with the upcoming disturbance. Gong Ji had also arrived and stopped Chang Fengyin and Luo Mantion from fighting. Very soon, the four remaining Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance gathered together with Luo Mantion and He Dao, who had betrayed the Righteous Alliance. They discussed their current predicament. Gong Ji, is there still no news from the young Star Lord? We can't resolve our current predicament by ourselves. We can only rely on the young Star Lord to send some experts from the Star Brilliance plane over, the gentle breeze ancestor asked during the meeting. His brows were already tightly furrowed. Gong Ji shook her head. I've asked the young Star Lord many times to send some experts from the Star Brilliance plane over, but the young Star Lord has never given me a proper reply. It's as if there's something he can't say. Gong Ji Wulu, the predicament we're facing right now is all because of your stubbornness. Even Zheng, who died because of it. Tell me what we should do now. Once the martial soul lineage and the Righteous Alliance attack us, we won't be able to hold on for too long with our formations. Once the formations fall, our Four Symbols Alliance will suffer the same fate as the God's Fallen clan, the Heav-shaking sect, and the Taoist sect of emergence. We'll truly be erased from the cloud plane. Chang Fengyin called out. You can't blame us for this. After all, no one expected the martial soul lineage to suddenly appear, nor did they expect the martial soul lineage to ignore the young Star Lord's deterrence and openly oppose us. Gong Ji said emotionlessly. The meeting of the upper echelon of the Four Symbols Alliance led to quite a dispute. The young Star Lord's face darkened as he remained in a luxurious palace. He was in an extremely bad mood. Martial soul lineage. Humph. Once this trial ends, I'll definitely ask my foster father to take action and make you pay the price. The young Star Lord clenched his fists as he became extremely furious. Originally, the plan this time had been perfect. Jianqin should have been dead for sure, but the appearance of the martial soul lineage had completely turned the situation around, causing him to fail. As a result, his hatred for the martial soul lineage was bone deep. Why are you so angry, young Star Lord? At this moment, a voice boomed through the empty hall. Who is it? Come out. The young Star Lord's face sank. He looked around, but he failed to see anyone. He also could not tell where the voice came from. Chapter 2674. You dare to flirt with me? The young Star Lord said coldly. He did not look behind him because he had already checked the surroundings. The luxurious palace was empty. Aside from him, there was no one else. Furthermore, he did not sense the slightest bit of movement from behind him. The person who had spoken in secret was clearly toying with him. Hee, you're exaggerating, young Star Lord. I'm not in the mood to flirt with you. The voice rang out again. The young Star Lord's eyes suddenly narrowed. This time, the voice did not come from everywhere. Instead, it clearly came from behind him. Moreover, he could tell from the voice that the person was very close to him. The young Star Lord immediately turned around and saw an azure-robed man standing behind him silently with a single glance. He seemed to be smiling at him. The azure-robed man did not give off any presence at all, nor did he give off any pulses of life. If it were not for the fact that he could clearly see him, the young Star Lord would have even doubted whether there really was a person right before him. Who are you? The young Star Lord stared at the azure-robed man. Even though the man seemed like a mortal, he could sense an extremely dangerous presence from him with his sharp senses. The young Star Lord secretly became cautious. His instincts told him that the person before him was definitely not someone who would stay put. He was not to be trifled with. This king comes from the Lone Heaven Plain. The azure-robed man smiled, but his smile made the young star lord shiver. It was as if this was the smiling face of a demon. It looked so terrifying. The lone heaven plain. The young star lord murmured as he began to think. He glanced past the azure-robed man. Suddenly he seemed to think of something. A gleam of light flashed through his eyes, and he said, "Are you one of the 4 heavenly kings of the lone heaven plain, the heavenly king of azure brilliance?" "It looks like the young star lord has heard of me." "That's right, it's me," the azure-robed man said indifferently. Afterwards he walked over to a chair and sat down. He studied the majestic yet extremely luxurious palace. "It looks like the young star lord knows how to enjoy life. Even the old guys of the 4 Symbols Alliance probably haven't stayed in such a luxurious residence before. Greetings, heavenly king of azure brilliance." Now that his identity had been confirmed, the young star lord immediately became cautious. Even though he was the foster son of the 9 brilliant star lord, he was forced to lower his haughty attitude before the heavenly king of azure brilliance. He had heard of the heavenly king of azure brilliance's notoriety more than once. He was unruly, cold-blooded, and merciless. He killed decisively. He was a renowned and dangerous figure in the saints' world. Even though he was not one of the most powerful people, he was definitely one of the people that could not be provoked. This was because the heavenly king of azure brilliance possessed the greatest speed in the world. Even with the entire saints' world in perspective, there were barely any experts who could catch up to him. Moreover, he was narrow-minded and extremely vengeful. As a result, many experts in the saints' world tolerated the heavenly king of azure brilliance as much as they could and did their best to avoid provoking him. Otherwise, once they became enemies, they would not be able to catch up to the heavenly king of azure brilliance, even if they completely overwhelmed him in strength. What could they do? Moreover, they would have to face the heavenly king of azure brilliance's almost endless revenge in the future. As a result, all the experts in the saints' world who had some backing were unwilling to provoke the heavenly king of azure brilliance. For example, the star brilliance plane ranked towards the top of the 49 great planes. The cloud plane could not be compared to the star brilliance plane. It was filled with sects and experts, but the only person who could truly ignore the heavenly king of azure brilliance was his foster father, the 9 brilliant star lord. Moreover, the young star lord had once heard from his foster father that even if his foster father wanted to kill the heavenly king of azure brilliance, it would take him quite a lot of effort. This was because he needed to catch up to the heavenly king of azure brilliance first. Although his foster father was powerful and renowned throughout the world, known to be a supreme expert only second to Grand Exalts, he was not even as good as experts who had grasped the laws of space when it came to chasing down enemies. As a result, the young star lord feared the heavenly king of azure brilliance slightly. As a matter of fact, he feared him slightly. He dared to offend the heavenly palace of Bishing because he was certain that Exan would not dare to kill him. After all, the heavenly palace of Bishing did not only have Exa. The First Majesty Exan had to consider many things as well. She had to consider whether she could fend off the 9 brilliant star lord or even the blood-tier Grand Exalt's fury. However, the heavenly king of azure brilliance was an unruly and fearless person. If he really was angered, he could do anything. Senior Heavenly King, the 4 Symbols Alliance is currently protected by a formation. How did you enter? The young star lord asked carefully. The defenses of this formation are impressive, but it's a piece of cake for me to get through it if I want to. Any formation that can be easily destroyed by me won't be able to stop me. I can come and go as I please, the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance said nonchalantly. He did not take the 4 Symbols Alliance seriously at all. I have heard many legends about Senior Heavenly King in the past. Now that I've met you, Senior Heavenly King really does live up to your reputation. May I ask why Senior Heavenly King has suddenly come to find me? The young star lord clasped his fist. Right now, he was like a completely different person compared to how he was in the past. I just happened to pass by here. As soon as I heard that the 9 brilliant star Lord Sun was on the cloud plain, I came here to take a look. However, it looks like you've encountered some problems, said the heavenly king of azure brilliance. Before the young star Lord could reply, he continued, the 9 brilliant star Lord is one of the few supreme experts who have reached the 9th heavenly layer in the saint's world. If he takes another step forward, he'll become a grand exalt, where he'll become a supreme sovereign. He's someone we admire. Since you're the only son of the 9 brilliant star Lord, I'll give this to you. Just treat it as a form of protection. You can treat it as a sign of goodwill. As he said that, the heavenly king of azure brilliance extended a finger, and immediately an azure feather that was only as long as a finger appeared out of nowhere. It shone with a faint azure light, which was quite enchanting. These are life-bound feathers. They were condensed from this king's essence, vitality, and soul, and then nurtured in my body for many years. Every single feather possesses the power to destroy the world. It's equivalent to a full-powered attack from this king. After all these years, I've only managed to nurture 3 life-bound feathers. Every single one of them is extremely precious. Even my direct disciples have never received one from me. For the sake of the 9 brilliant star Lord, I'll give you one of these life-bound feathers as a form of protection. The 9 brilliant star Lord is currently in seclusion. If you encounter any danger, he won't be able to save you in time. Thank you, Heavenly King. I will definitely remember your kindness today. The young star Lord was overjoyed. He stowed the feather away, carefully in a hurry. He stared at the azure feather in his hand as the light in his eyes flickered. May I ask if this life-bound feather can be used to attack Heavenly King? The Heavenly King of azure brilliance smiled strangely. Since it's a form of protection, it can obviously be used to harm people. As long as they don't come across 5th heavenly layer grand primes, they'll be heavily injured, even if they don't die before my life-bound feather. Even if they come across 5th heavenly layer experts, they'll struggle to gain any benefits as long as they're not on the level of the solitary sword ancestor. You better use it well. What about those below Grand Prime? The young star Lord asked. Those below Grand Prime will definitely die. With that, the heavenly king of azure brilliance vanished silently. He had left the 4 Symbols Alliance without anyone knowing. From the beginning to the end, the ancestors of the 4 Symbols Alliance were completely unaware. Those below Grand Prime will definitely die. The young star Lord murmured as excitement filled his eyes. The life-bound feather from the heavenly king of azure brilliance was truly a timely gift to him. Jianqin isn't even a chaotic prime. Using this feather on him is letting him off too easily. But Senior Heavenly King said that Father is in seclusion? That's strange. When I left the Star Brilliance plane, Father wasn't in seclusion. Why did he suddenly enter seclusion so soon after I left? I don't know how long Foster Father will be in seclusion this time. Then, when will my training in the Cloud Prefecture end? Chapter 2675. Whether it was the 4 Symbols Alliance, the Righteous Alliance, or even the successors of the martial soul lineage, no one knew about the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance's arrival on the Cloud Plane. It was as if no one else on the Cloud Plane knew about his arrival apart from the young Star Lord. However, nothing was absolute. A child had witnessed everything the Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance had done on the Cloud Plane, including his departure from the Cloud Plane. The child was the Heartless Child from the Myriad Bone Guild. The Heartless Child remained in the imperial capital of the Blood Sun Empire the entire time. He sat on the roof of an inn, extremely close to the headquarters of the 4 Symbols Alliance. He's actually taken out his life-bound feather. What is this bird trying to do? Does he want to use the young Star Lord to kill Jianqin? The Heartless Child looked away from the headquarters of the 4 Symbols Alliance and towards the sky. His eyes were extremely deep, as if they were filled with the reflections of space. Vaguely, the sun, moon, and stars seemed to revolve as the laws of the world wove together. He directly stared into the depths of outer space and locked onto an azure figure that shot off into the distance with terrifying speed. He stopped extremely far away from the cloud plane and paid close attention to the cloud plane. The heartless child could discover the heavenly king of azure brilliance easily, but the heavenly king of azure brilliance failed to sense the heartless child's existence at all. He did not even know that everything he did on the cloud plane, including his current situation, was being watched by the heartless child the entire time. This bird really is like the rumors. He's extremely vengeful. After learning about Jianshin's identity and that the Anata Grand Exalt is still alive, he still hasn't given up on killing Jianshin. He wants to use the young star lord to kill Jianshin. It's just that he probably doesn't know about the relationship between Jianshin and the Anata Grand Exalt. Jianshin is the Anata Grand Exalt's fruit of ways. If Jianshin really does die here, this bird really won't be able to live for long. The heartless child murmured. His lips curled into a playful smile as he became even more interested. It's just that I still need Jianshin to deal with the crisis of my myriad bones. Jianshin can't die here. However, it seems like the tiny cloud plane can still be lively for a while. The heartless child was at ease. He stared at the cloud plane. He seemed like a spectator who was eagerly watching a fascinating performance that was about to begin. In the blink of an eye, 3 days had already passed since the three peak organizations, the Heav-shaking sect, the Taoist sect of emergence, and the God's Fallen clan were wiped out. During those 3 days, the 5 regions of the cloud plane were peaceful. Neither the Righteous Alliance nor the Martial Soul lineage did anything to the Four Symbols Alliance. On the other hand, the Four Symbols Alliance did not seem to have changed at all on the surface. The protective formation was constantly activated, and the formation shone with a hazy light. It possessed startling power, obscuring everything inside. No one could enter or leave. All the experts on the cloud plane knew that this was only the calm before the storm. A shocking change that could affect the entire situation on the cloud plane, something that could even be recorded in the annals of history, was silently brewing under the peaceful surface. This was because the Martial Soul Mountain in outer space had never left. The illusionary mountain represented the Martial Soul lineage. The Martial Soul Mountain had not left, which meant that the Martial Soul lineage was still on the cloud plane. Finally, on the 10th day since the three peak organizations were wiped out, the peace on the cloud plane was broken. Many people from the Tong family, the Fire God clan, and the Cosmic Sect all surged out. Under the lead of the Primordial Realm experts, they entered the divine halls that hovered in the sky. Afterwards, the divine halls of various grades and shapes landed in the hands of the Primordial Realm experts. They were taken to the southern region through teleportation formations. The powerful protective formations shone brightly outside the headquarters of the Righteous Alliance in the southern region of the cloud plane. The terrifying pulses of energy seemed indestructible. Figures appeared one after another outside the protective formations. All the Primordial Realm experts of the Tong family, the Fire God clan, and the Cosmic Sect gathered there at the same time. They ranged from regular infinite primes to grand primes. At that moment, all three organizations had mobilized their elites. Get into formation! Get into formation! Get into formation! At this moment, 3 shouts rang out from the 3 great forces at the same time. As the shouts rang out, several divine palaces suddenly appeared. The doors opened and the godhood cultivators of the 3 great forces surged out like a torrent. As soon as they emerged from the divine halls, they formed various formations. Powerful energy surged, causing the surroundings to shine with dazzling, multicolored light. It was quite dazzling. This time, the total number of humans dispatched by the 3 top forces was close to 200,000. Each of the 3 great powers had existed for hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years. The number of disciples they had was also in the millions, or even far more. However, Most of the clansmen remained at the mortal realm, sainthood, and origin realm. Only a very small portion of them could truly reach godhood. As for the primordial realm, they were even rarer. Therefore, it was not an exaggeration to say that the nearly 200,000 cultivators that appeared here at this moment were almost all the elites of these three top forces. This was because even the weakest of them was at godhood. They've finally come. At the same time, the gentle breeze ancestor and the other grand primes hovered in the air within the protective formations of the Four Symbols Alliance. They stared at the outside sternly. Luo Mantian and He Dao happened to be among them. The two of them stared at the three figures standing at the front of the army outside the protective formation. Their expressions were complicated. Young Star Lord, our protective formations will fall in the end. We have no chance of victory against the combined forces of the martial soul lineage and the righteous alliance. I wonder if the young Star Lord has managed to contact the Star Brilliance plane. Gong Ji arrived before the young Star Lord and was extremely stern. If there are no reinforcements, only death awaits us unless we give up on everything on the cloud plane. Wu Lu said as well. He was heavy-hearted. Don't worry. I already have a way to deal with them. The young Star Lord said confidently. Boom! At this moment, a deafening rumble rang out. The protective formation of the Four Symbols Alliance shone brightly. Ripples appeared on the barrier of light, like ripples in water. At this moment, if someone stood in the distance, they would be able to see an extremely magnificent sight. A powerful pillar of energy shot in from outer space. Like a rainbow, it pierced through the surroundings and collided with the protective formations of the Four Symbols Alliance. Moreover, the huge pillar of energy did not disperse with a single strike. Instead, it continued to exist as if endless energy poured into it from outer space, preventing it from dissipating. The people who had taken action were members of the martial soul lineage. Chapter 2676. The martial soul lineage used the power of the mountain soul to make up for the power of the Four Symbols Alliance's formations. The power of the mountain soul came from the true martial soul mountain. The martial soul mountain could be used as a tremendous and almost infinite source of energy, replenishing the mountain soul across vast distances. That way, the 8 successors of the martial soul lineage did not need to exhaust too much of their own power at all to get through the formations of the Four Symbols Alliance. This was because they were attacking the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance. After the Four Symbols Alliance merged with a few peak organizations in the past, they had always worked hard to develop the southern region. They had already made the defenses of the southern region impregnable. This was their final line of defense. Its defenses were extremely astonishing, enough to block the attacks of 3rd Heavenly Layer Grand Primes. Even against 4th Heavenly Layer Grand Primes, they could last for a while. As a result, the martial soul lineage and the righteous alliance would definitely expend quite a lot of energy if they wanted to forcefully get through the formations. Moreover, they would have to go through a bitter battle after getting through the formations. If they spent too much energy on getting through the formations, the righteous alliance would definitely suffer extremely heavy casualties in the following battles. As a result, the martial soul lineage would be responsible for getting through the formations. They would preserve the battle prowess of the righteous alliance as much as possible and reduce the number of casualties. After all, the righteous alliance was no longer the overlord that possessed an absolute advantage over the Four Symbols Alliance after the betrayal of Luo Mantian, He Dao, and Guli. As a result, they needed to rely on the martial soul lineage to destroy the Four Symbols Alliance. As the martial soul lineage got through the formations, Tong Wuming, Lian Wuji, and Zhou Zhidao all looked at the huge pillar of energy that shot down from the martial soul mountain. In particular, their faces changed when they sensed the terrifying energy within the pillar of energy. Have you sensed it? The martial soul lineage seems to be using the power of the martial soul mountain when they get through the formations. As a result, such a powerful attack won't exhaust them at all. The martial soul lineage really lives up to their name. Although, They don't have any grand primes. They're still more powerful than many peak organizations in the Saints world. With the Martial Soul lineage, the Four Symbols Alliance will definitely be destroyed. Their protective formations are powerful, but under the constant attacks of the Martial Soul lineage, their energy will be severely depleted. Let's see how long they can last. The three patriarchs of the Righteous Alliance transmitted their voices to each other. At the same time, a large army had gathered within the protective formations of the Four Symbols Alliance. All the cultivators, regardless of their strength, stood in formations, ready for battle at any time. However, their morale was clearly low. The formation is depleting its energy too quickly. If this continues, it won't last much longer, the Gentle Breeze ancestor said in a deep voice as he looked outside the formation. Even though their protective formation only rippled slightly from the attacks of the Martial Soul Mountain, the powerful pillars of light from the Martial Soul Mountain continued to rain down. As a result, the formation was constantly under attack, consuming energy at all times. In terms of days, the amount of energy consumed in a single day would be extremely terrifying. Don't worry. Find a way to draw Genshin down. I have a way to reverse your situation, said the young Star Lord. He looked at the army of the Righteous Alliance that had already gathered outside. He was extremely composed. Even though the Four Symbols Alliance did not possess any advantage in the current situation, there was no fear on the young Star Lord's face at all. He was the son of the 9 brilliant Star Lord. He was confident that even if the Four Symbols Alliance was destroyed, the Righteous Alliance and the Martial Soul lineage would not dare to touch him. All right. The Gentle Breeze ancestor agreed. He glanced past Wu Lu, Gong Ji, Chong Fengyin, Luo Mantian, and He Dao and said, "This is a battle of life and death. None of us can hold back at all. Everyone, please face the enemy with Old Man." With the Gentle Breeze ancestors' orders, the 6 Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance flew out of the protective formation at the same time. However, their targets were not the 3 experts of the Righteous Alliance. Instead, they charged into outer space, towards the Martial Soul Mountain. Disperse their formation and force out Genshin, the Gentle Breeze ancestor said telepathically. His principle before was not to provoke Genshin, but at the same time, he did not want to offend him. However, there was no turning back now. Coupled with the fact that he had been forced by the situation, he was forced to follow the young Star Lord's orders. The 6 Grand Primes of the Four Symbols Alliance moved out together. Immediately, pressure filled the sky as terrifying pulses of energy radiated from them, shaking up space and distorting the stars. With a single step, they directly appeared before the illusionary Martial Soul Mountain. They did not disperse. Instead, the 6 of them gathered together. They all wielded various weapons as tremendous energy poured into the god artifacts like a river, causing them to shine brightly. Crack! Crack! Shattering noises kept coming from the space around them. This was the sound of space collapsing. Darkness appeared one after another, and the stars in the sky disappeared. The 6 of them gathered together. Before they had truly struck out, just the pulses of energy from the god artifacts in their hands were devastating. Traceless sky fall! At this moment, a bellow rang out. Luo Mantian was the first to strike. He wielded a medium-quality god artifact sword and directly used a god artifact battle skill, stabbing it towards the Martial Soul Mountain from afar. As he stabbed out, a huge spatial crack appeared. The strike ripped through space with ease. Terrifying energy and pressure shot towards the Martial Soul Mountain as an inky green soared chi. Heavenly Way lightning. He Dao called out as well. He held a wooden staff that was covered in the marks of time. It was also a medium-quality god artifact. He extended his staff, and a pressure immediately permeated the surroundings. Terrifying pulses of energy and the power of laws rose up, condensing into a bolt of lightning in the end. It shot towards the Martial Soul Mountain with a flash. The laws he comprehended had nothing to do with lightning. Instead, it was the effect of practicing the god-tier battle skill, the voidless lightning. There is life and death in the world. The world bestows you with life, while I bring you death, Gongji murmured. A gray aura permeated her old face. At that moment, her entire body radiated with a heavy presence of death. An invisible pulse radiated from her, permeating the martial Soul Mountain. Wherever the invisible pulse passed by, everything in the world, including the universe, seemed to wither away. This was the laws of death. Chapter 2677. The 6 grand primes of the 4 symbols alliance struck out at the same time. All of them used their full strength. They used various god-tier battle skills and terrifying secret techniques. They were so powerful that they could shake up the world. They were extremely terrifying, collapsing space as if it had returned to chaos. Everyone's attacks were concentrated on a single point, so the power did not disperse. It was all directed towards the martial Soul Mountain. The 6 of them could tell very clearly that the formation used by the 8 successors of the martial soul lineage completely consumed the power of the illusionary martial Soul Mountain. To the 8 of them, the consumption was almost negligible. As a result, even if they bombarded the protective formations of the 4 symbols alliance with such powerful attacks for several days and nights, the martial soul lineage would not suffer too much losses. However, the protective formations of the 4 symbols alliance would require an extremely tremendous amount of energy to defend. This was extremely passive to them. As a result, not only did they want to destroy the martial soul lineage's formation and lure Genshin away according to the young Star Lord's arrangements, but they also wanted to gather their strength and destroy the martial Soul Mountain unexpectedly. Once the illusionary martial Soul Mountain collapsed, the martial soul lineage would no longer have an endless supply of energy. Their 4 symbols alliance would be able to last a little longer through the protective formation. Tong Wuming, Lian Wuji, and Zhou Zhidao, who had been on high alert at all times, saw what the 6 experts were doing, and their faces sank. Oh no! Stop them! They want to destroy the martial Soul Mountain. We can't let them succeed. Tong Wuming and the other 2 cried out. With a flash, they appeared in outer space in an instant and attacked with all their strength to stop him. Although they could still get through the formation if the martial Soul Mountain was destroyed, they would need to expend a lot of energy. However, it was already too late for the 3 of them to stop it. The 6 grand primes of the 4 symbols alliance attacked the martial Soul Mountain completely out of the blue. They completed it in a single instance, so even if the 3 of them wanted to stop 1 or 2 attacks, they would not be able to do so. All they could do was watch as the 6 powerful attacks landed on the illusionary martial Soul Mountain. Ha 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 ha. The power of the mountain soul can even withstand attacks from 5th heavenly layer grand primes for a while, let alone you. Can the 6 of you reach the level of a 5th heavenly layer grand prime if you work together? Han Zong laughed aloud on the mountain soul. With his laughter, a screen of light rose up, enveloping the entire mountain soul. Boom! 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 When the terrifying attacks of the 6 grand primes landed on the screen of light, it only caused a faint ripple before returning to normal. This defense is too strong. How is this possible? This isn't even the real martial Soul Mountain. It's just an illusion created by the martial soul lineage when they move about in the legends. Just an illusion is so powerful. The martial soul lineage is just too terrifying. The 6 peak experts of the 4 symbols alliance were taken aback by this. All of them became dumbfounded as disbelief filled their faces. The heritage of the martial soul lineage is actually so terrifying. Tong Wuming, Lian Wuji, and Zhou Zhidao were stunned by this as well. The ancestors of the Cloud Plain did not possess a lot of information about the martial soul lineage. Most of them had read about it in books or heard about it from rumors. It was not very detailed, so it was extremely incomplete. As a result, they were all extremely shocked at this moment. Since you've come out of your own accord, let's fight." Hanzong stood up. His presence surged, and he left the martial soul mountain in a single step, charging towards the 6 experts of the 4 Symbols Alliance. 4th junior brother, 5th junior sister, 6th junior brother, 7th junior brother, and 8th junior brother, stay here. I'll go play with them. Chu Jian stood up as well and ended the formation. His presence surged as he walked out while laughing aloud. "I can't even be bothered to use the martial soul array against them. Since they've come out of their own accord, I'll kill them all here." In the end, Yu Chao left as well. The 3 greatest experts of the martial soul lineage had emerged at the same time. Their appearance immediately caused the hearts of the 6 experts of the 4 Symbols Alliance to shiver. They all became extremely stern as they became extremely fearful of the martial soul lineage. "Kill!" The gentle breeze ancestor called out. He was fully armed with God artifact armor as he took the initiative to receive Hanzong. Chu Jian faced Luo Mantian, while Yu Chao faced Gongji. Tong Wuming, Lian Wuji, and Zhou Zhidao faced Chang Fengyan, He Dao, and Wu Lu. Immediately, deafening booms rang out incessantly in outer space. All sorts of laws intertwined, mixing with violent energy to form waves of destructive power that wreaked havoc in the world, causing even the stars to tremble. The difference in strength between the 3 experts of the Righteous Alliance and Chang Fengyan, He Dao, and Wu Lu was not particularly great. They were basically evenly matched. Even though there was a slight difference in battle prowess, they were unable to determine the victor in a short amount of time. However, Luo Mantian and Gongji were not so lucky. Their opponents were Chu Jian and Yu Chao of the martial soul lineage. As soon as they clashed, their souls were shaken up by the secret techniques of the martial soul lineage, causing them to lose the upper hand. Luo Mantian and Gongji were rather pale. They gritted their teeth and endured. Blood oozed from the corner of their mouths. The blood did not come from being injured. Instead, it came from biting the tip of their tongues viciously to wake themselves up from the shock to their souls. In the last battle, when they faced the attacks of the martial soul lineage 2 against 1, they could slowly recover with the assistance of others. However, they were fighting alone right now. They could only rely on themselves. Of course, they came up with an idea that was not really an idea when they faced the attacks of martial soul force, which was to immediately retreat and pull away from the martial soul lineage as soon as their souls were attacked. They would only need a few seconds to recover. "Seniors, let's assist 2nd senior brother in killing Luo Mantian first," Jianqin said sternly on the martial soul mountain. The person he wanted to kill the most on the battlefield was Luo Mantian. Not only was this person the first to launch a sneak attack on the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak, but he had also used a dagger imbued with the power of the curses, which brought great danger to the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. As a result, the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak was unable to take part in the battle this time. Instead, he remained on the Heavens Link Peak to suppress the power of the curse. No one objected to Jianqin's request. Very soon, the situation on the martial soul mountain changed. With the 5 of them, they stood in a different formation and locked onto Luo Mantian. In the next moment, a powerful pillar of light shot out. Luo Mantian had always been slightly wary of the martial soul mountain. As soon as he sensed the actions of Jianqin and the others and the pillar of light that shot towards him, his face immediately changed. He dared not take it on forcefully, nor did he try to block it. Instead, with a single movement, he directly dove into the spatial crack beside him. Within the spatial crack, the laws were incomplete. The 5 elements were inverted, and various violent streams of energy wreaked havoc. Chaotic streams of time formed vortices that revolved rapidly. It was extremely dangerous. Even primordial realm experts needed to be careful when they set foot in there. The slightest carelessness could lead to death. In the past, when Jianqin was hunted down by the Azure Pung King, he had only been able to rampage about fearlessly because of the Inata Tower. As Luo Mantion fled into the spatial crack, the pillar of light from the martial soul mountain followed closely behind him. However, as soon as the pillar of energy entered the spatial crack, the terrifying undulations it gave off caused the spatial crack to become unstable. Immediately, the chaotic flow of energy within the spatial crack became extremely violent. Temporal vortices began to move chaotically as well. The pillar of light from the martial soul mountain rapidly weakened and dimmed. In the end, when it collided with a temporal vortex, it seemed to have been weakened by an endless amount of time, causing the pillar of light to disperse. Luo Mantion had successfully dodged the attack. Chapter 2678. Chu Jian and Luo Mantion engaged in an intense battle within the spatial crack. As a result, the space within several 100,000 kilometers began to churn as they fought. Powerful and terrifying streams of energy surged about chaotically as the temporal vortexes slowly approached one another. When two temporal vortexes collided, they would either collapse together or be devoured by the other temporal vortex, becoming even more powerful. Chu Jian and Luo Mantion fought as they dodged the temporal vortexes in this strange space. With their cultivations and realms, they were able to ignore the berserk energy, turbulence. However, they were extremely afraid of the time vortexes. This was because temporal vortexes contain the laws of time. Different temporal vortexes had different flows of time. Some powerful temporal vortexes could last for 1,000,000 years, 10 million years, or even longer in a single instance. Moreover, the flow of time did not always advance. It could recede as well. If it advanced, they would be able to live as long as the world with their great cultivation. It would be very difficult for the temporal vortexes to cause any substantial harm to them. However, if it retreated for 1,000,000 years, or even 10 million years, it would mean that their cultivation would regress. Martial soul lineage, the matter hasn't reached an unsalvageable point. Why must you force us into a corner and try to kill us? Why don't we both take a step back? That way, your grievances with the young star lord won't deepen any further. Luo Mantian's armor shone with dazzling light as surging energy condensed around him. It was almost tangible. He stared at Chu Jian emotionlessly as he spoke sternly. Even though his cultivation completely surpassed Chu Jian's, Luo Mantion was completely helpless against the martial soul force of the martial soul lineage. Even more terrifyingly, every single strike from the martial soul lineage possessed a sliver of martial soul force to some extent. Even though martial soul force was not as powerful as a single martial soul secret technique, at their level of cultivation, they fought with lightning-like speed. They would have struck out thousands of times in just a few seconds. Even with Luo Mantian's cultivation as a second heavenly layer Grand Prime, the accumulation of martial soul force from the thousands of attacks was extremely difficult to bear. It drained away the power of his soul severely. Furthermore, he would have to endure a martial spirit secret technique from time to time. The martial soul secret techniques were the truly terrifying aspect of the martial soul lineage. Every single martial soul secret technique could heavily injure opponents of the same level instantly or directly slay them. Although it was very difficult for Luo Mantian's soul to be heavily injured by a martial soul secret technique with the strength of a second heavenly layer Grand Prime soul, it was still enough to stun him temporarily and cause him excruciating pain. Hence, Luo Mantion decided that it was best not to fight if he could. Chu Jian sneered when he heard Luo Mantian's words. He said, "You're called Luo Mantion, right? You sure put it nicely. If it were something else, our martial soul lineage might not have bothered with you. After all, the young Star Lord's foster father, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord, holds quite the weight in the Saints' world." Unfortunately, the matter this time threatened 8th Junior's life. If we had come a little later, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Who knows how long it has been since our martial soul lineage has had 8 successors? In the end, we almost lost a junior on the cloud plane. This grievance is as deep as the ocean. So even if we have to offend the young Star Lord, our martial soul lineage must kill you. Moreover, we really don't take the young Star Lord seriously. In reality, there's no one on the star brilliance plane who can make our martial soul lineage fear us apart from the 9 brilliant Star Lord. Chu Jian's voice rang out. His voice was firm and filled with killing intent, which made Luo Mantian become extremely stern. Isn't Jianshin still alive? Not only is he still alive, but he's also unscathed. Why must you go to this extent? Luo Mantian continued. Chu Jian's battle prowess was just too great, and he had many treasures on him. Moreover, he possessed martial soul force. Luo Mantian knew that if they continued fighting, he would be defeated in the end. This was because the longer the battle with the martial soul lineage dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for him. Luo Mantian, do you really think our martial soul lineage is so easy to offend? A cold smile appeared on Chu Jian's face. He unleashed the soul-breaking martial soul technique, causing Luo Mantian's body to tremble. He let out a muffled groan as intense pain came from his origin soul, causing Luo Mantian to temporarily lose focus. However, Luo Mantian was already experienced in dealing with this. The moment his soul ached, he retreated instinctively, pulling away from Chu Jian. Do you really think you'll be safe with this? Chu Jian sneered. He suddenly struck out, and the sword in his hand erupted with sword chi as he swung it towards Luo Mantian's side. A huge temporal vortex wreaked havoc several dozen kilometers to Luo Mantian's side. Originally, the temporal vortex moved in the opposite direction from Luo Mantian, so it was impossible for it to come into contact with Luo Mantian. However, when Chu Jian swung out with his sword, the great power that erupted actually caused the temporal vortex's trajectory to change. It rapidly approached Luo Mantian. If he was conscious, Luo Mantian could easily avoid the huge temporal vortex. However, after being struck by the soul-destroying technique, he lost his senses of the outside world for a short period of time. He was unable to sense the temporal vortex at all. However, that was not all. Seeing how Luo Mantian was about to fall into the temporal vortex, Chu Jian used the martial soul room again. He suddenly pressed his finger against his forehead, and his eyes darkened in a single instant. At the same time, Chu Jian's martial soul force was depleted at an astonishing rate. In just a single instant, more than half of Chu Jian's 9th heavenly layer chaotic prime's martial soul force had been depleted. Even with Chu Jian's current level of cultivation, he found it rather difficult to endure losing half of his martial soul force in a single instance. A sliver of exhaustion appeared on his face. However, with the appearance of exhaustion, a terrifying sense of danger that could make even 9th heavenly layer chaotic primes despair and 1st heavenly layer grand primes pale in fright suddenly appeared. Heaven-severing technique! Chu Jian's finger on his forehead suddenly pointed towards Luo Mantian. With that, half of Chu Jian's martial soul force immediately surged out, condensing into a dazzling light that only members of the martial soul lineage could sense. It turned into an invisible blade that no one apart from the martial soul lineage could sense. It arrived above Luo Mantian's head in a single instant, directly slashing towards his soul. The slash seemed to cleave apart the world as if it had been cleaved in half. Even the laws of the world could not stop it, allowing the slash to directly break through Luo Mantian's energy defenses. It ignored Luo Mantian's god artifact armor and viciously struck Luo Mantian's soul with terrifying force. After taking the hit from the heaven-slashing martial spirit, Luo Mantian's body did not simply tremble and let out a muffled groan. Instead, he directly let out a blood-curdling scream. His face instantly turned pale without a trace of blood. Bright red blood spurted out from his 7 orifices. His primordial spirit had become extremely dim, and the primordial spirit flame was on the verge of collapse, giving people a feeling that it would be extinguished at any moment. Chu Jian's heaven-severing technique was just too shocking. No one at the same level of cultivation could endure it. Even first, heavenly layer grand primes were in danger of dying. Even though Luo Mantian managed to endure it with his soul at the second heavenly layer, he clearly paid a heavy price. In the next moment, Luo Mantian clutched his head firmly and fell into the huge temporal vortex. If he were in peak condition, he could have used his powerful cultivation to forcefully break out. However, his soul was heavily injured like never before. He had almost fainted, and his mind was in a mess. As a result, he was unable to put up any effective resistance when he fell into the temporal vortex. The temporal vortex spun rapidly. The laws of time inside were extremely chaotic. As Luo Mantian sank into the temporal vortex, his god artifact rapidly dimmed. Even the pulses of his cultivation became weaker and weaker. In just a few seconds, the god artifact he wore returned to its original appearance. Clearly, there were no pulses of energy within the god artifact at all. In the span of a few breaths, Luo Mantian did not know whether time had gone forward or backwards, but the power of the god armor had been completely drained. Even the power of his cultivation had vanished. At this moment, a rope appeared in Chu Jian's hand. To no surprise, the rope was a low-quality god artifact. He suddenly tossed the rope out, wrapping it around Luo Mantian, who had fallen into the temporal vortex. As soon as the low-quality god artifact, rope, entered the temporal vortex, it immediately dimmed at a visible rate. The energy within the rope drained away at an extremely terrifying rate. Chu Jian was stern as he stared at the rope in his hand. Without any hesitation, he immediately pulled hard and forcefully pulled Luo Mantian out of the temporal vortex. As a Grand Prime, Luo Mantian possessed a lifespan as long as the world. As a result, he did not suffer any obvious injuries in the temporal vortex. However, the divine artifact armor on his body could no longer cover the entire room. Even the vast power of cultivation in his body had been completely depleted. His cultivation did not regress, but clearly he had been in the temporal vortex for a very long time. All the tremendous energy within him had been swept away. However, his primordial spirit was still in the same state as before it fell into the time vortex. There were no obvious changes in the time vortex. The soul has the imprint of ways. This temporal vortex clearly hasn't reached the level where it can erase the souls of Grand Primes, or it would have been impossible for your soul to survive until now. Chu Jian stared at Luo Mantian. Luo Mantian still had not recovered. Without the protection of his god artifact, his cultivation had completely vanished as well. He posed no threat to Chu Jian at all. Swish. Chapter 2679. The spatial crack where Chu Jian and Luo Mantian fought did not close up, so all the peak experts outside saw what happened clearly. As a result, when the Grand Primes of the Righteous Alliance and Four Symbols Alliance saw Luo Mantian's death, they were all shocked. Although the martial soul lineage had also lost 2 Grand Primes in the battle last time, there were only first heavenly layer Grand Primes. In particular, Zhang, who had only become a Grand Prime recently, so he was one of the weakest Grand Primes. Luo Mantian, on the other hand, was a veteran who had become a Grand Prime many years ago. He had reached the second heavenly layer of Grand Prime, so his death naturally caused quite a stir in everyone's hearts. Luo Mantian has actually died. Yi Dao, who had betrayed the Righteous Alliance with Luo Mantian, felt extremely mixed emotions. A sliver of sorrow appeared on his face. It has only been half a month since we left the Righteous Alliance. First, Guli died and now Luo Mantian. Moreover, the Righteous Alliance that should have been wiped out according to our predictions has gained an absolute advantage. Could it be that the decision we made back then was really wrong? Yi Dao's heart was heavy. For the first time, he began to doubt the decision the 3 of them had made to betray the Righteous Alliance. However, when he looked at the young star Lord below, he could not help but calm down. he said. So what if Jianqin has the support of the martial soul lineage? We have the young star lord representing the star brilliance mountain behind us. The young star lord still hasn't taken action, so he's probably planning something. I believe the moment the young star lord takes action, it'll definitely be an earth-shaking event. He'll be able to turn the situation around in a single stroke. Chu Jian had already emerged from the spatial crack with Luo Montian's corpse, returning to the battlefield. He knew that Jianqin needed a large number of corpses, so he tossed the corpse towards the mountain soul after emerging from the spatial crack. Jianqin was overjoyed on the mountain soul. He caught Luo Montian's corpse excitedly. Now he had collected 3 grand prime corpses. They were Zheng Hu Guli and Luo Mantian. Chu Jian did not take away Luo Montian's space ring. The successors of the martial soul lineage all knew that the wealth of these low grand primes would not be enough to tempt Han Zong, Chu Jian, and Yu Chao. As a result, all the items in the space ring were given to the 5 of them to distribute. However, now was not the time to check the spatial ring. Jianqin put away Luo Mantian's corpse and formed the formation again. This time we'll kill He Dao first. We can't let anyone who betrayed the righteous alliance go, Jianqin said as he stared coldly at He Dao, who was currently in an intense battle with Zhou Zhidao. He Dao and Zhou Zhidao were both first heavenly layer grand primes, so they were evenly matched. Neither of them could do anything to the other. However, when Jianqin looked at He Dao seemed to sense it. He exchanged glances with Jianqin from afar, and when he saw the coldness in Jianqin's eyes, his heart immediately shivered. He immediately understood that he would be the next target. The deaths of Zheng, Hu Guli, and Luo Mantian had greatly affected He Dao. His fear for the martial soul lineage had reached its limits, so when he sensed Jianqin's gaze, he did not hesitate at all. He immediately abandoned Zhou Zhidao and fled. Grand primes moved extremely quickly. In the blink of an eye, He Dao vanished from outer space, hiding in the protective formation of the 4 symbols alliance again. The protective formation could conceal everything. Whether it was the presence or the scenery, it was impossible to detect from the outside. As a result, once they hid in the protective formation, even attacks from the martial soul lineage with martial soul force would not be able to find them. Let's retreat. The gentle breeze ancestor ordered as soon as He Dao fled. They were not the martial soul lineage's opponent in the first place. With Luo Montian's death and He Dao's escape, the martial soul lineage had gained 2 more powerful opponents. If they continued fighting, they would only lose even faster. At that moment, the grand primes of the 4 symbols alliance vanished from outer space. They all hid in the protective formation. God damn it, martial soul force is just too difficult to defend against. The power of my soul drains away far too quickly when I fight against that expert of the martial soul lineage, and my soul is struck heavily from time to time. Gongji said grimly as she returned to the protective formation. Her face was extremely sunken, and there was a sliver of exhaustion on her face. God damn it, I'm a mighty 2nd heavenly layer grand prime. Yet I've been reduced to such a horrible state by a 9th heavenly layer chaotic prime brat. A strange legacy like the martial soul lineage shouldn't exist in the world. Luo Mantian has died so quickly. We really don't have any chance of victory now. The gentle breeze ancestor sighed softly. The gentle breeze ancestor sighed gently. He was stern. The battle prowess of the martial soul lineage was just too great. The 3 of them were only 9th heavenly layer chaotic primes, yet they could beat up the grand primes of the 4 symbols alliance so miserably. Where's Jianqin? Why hasn't Jianqin come out? Didn't I tell you to draw Jianqin out? There's so many of you, yet you can't even do something so simple. The young star lord arrived with an ugly expression. He questioned them. The young star lord was extremely eager to kill Jianqin. Now that he had obtained a trump card after so much difficulty, he could make Jianqin die a horrible death. He naturally did not want to wait a single moment longer. In his opinion, the heavenly king of azure brilliance's feather would still have enough power to kill the martial soul lineage after killing Jianqin. As long as he used the feather, he could immediately turn the situation around. The feather is my greatest trump card for killing Jianqin, so I can't reveal it beforehand. Otherwise, it'll be difficult to carry out the plan once Jianqin is on his guard. The young Star Lord was extremely furious. Boom! Suddenly, a deafening boom rang out. Under this loud sound, the entire ground trembled, and the Righteous Alliance's protective array shook violently, bursting with blinding light. Afterwards, the violent rumbles constantly rang out. Each one was more powerful than the last, and each one was more terrifying than the last. Just the loud rumbles were enough to make the surroundings collapse. Oh no, the Righteous Alliance has decided to launch an attack. The expressions of the experts of the Four Symbols Alliance changed. Outside the formation, energy surged as streaks of light shot into the sky. Powerful pulses of energy permeated the surroundings, causing the situation on the cloud plane to change. It alarmed countless people. All the elites of the Tong family, the cosmic sect, and the Fire God clan had already fallen into formation after formation. Under the orders of their ancestors, they launched forceful attacks against the protective formations of the Four Symbols Alliance, regardless of how much energy they had to expend. At the same time, even the ancestors of the three organizations took action. Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji all wielded God artifacts as they radiated with earth-shaking might. They also launched attacks against the formations. Every single strike was devastating, causing space to collapse. After killing Luo Mantian in the battle earlier, they had weakened the Four Symbols Alliance once again, widening the disparity in strength once again. As a result, Tong Wuming and the other two Grand Primes no longer cared about the loss of energy. With the assistance of the martial soul lineage, the Four Symbols Alliance had no chance of victory at all, even if the three of them did not take part. The martial soul lineage returned to the martial soul mountain again. They used the same method as before to draw on the power of the mountain soul, exhausting the formation's energy in the most effortless way possible. Chapter 2680. Within the protective formation of the Four Symbols Alliance, the ground shook as if a supreme formation had taken place. Even godhood cultivators could not help but sway as they stood on the ground. Fortunately, the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance was riddled with formations. Under the protection of the formations, the violent tremors did not cause any major damage to the headquarters. At this moment, basically all the forces of the Four Symbols Alliance were gathered inside. Everyone stared at the protective formation that had erupted with dazzling light in the sky as they fell silent. The atmosphere was extremely heavy. Based on this level of attack, we probably won't be able to last half a month. He Dao said with a heavy voice. He looked at the many experts of the Four Symbols Alliance who could only hide within the formation as mixed emotions filled his heart. Let alone half a month, even 7 days will be very difficult. After all, there are 3 Grand Primes outside, as well as many chaotic primes, infinite primes, and godhood cultivators working together, Gongji said with a darkened face. She felt extremely frustrated by the current situation. She glanced past the young Star Lord intentionally or unintentionally, and displeasure appeared on her face for the first time. The Four Symbols Alliance had already reached such a state, yet no experts from the Star Brilliance plane had come to reinforce them. Moreover, the young Star Lord did not seem to have sent any reinforcements to the Star Brilliance plane either, which made Gongji extremely furious. Arrange for a retreat. Activate the teleportation formation across planes and send the talented disciples to other planes. If we really are doomed, we'll have some descendants of our clans or sects at the very least. Moreover, fill up the formation with all the divine crystals we've accumulated over the years, as well as anything that can provide energy. Make some more time, the gentle breeze ancestor ordered helplessly. With his order, it immediately led to an uproar in the Four Symbols Alliance. Many people paled. This was because the order meant that the Four Symbols Alliance had truly reached the end of the line. They were powerless to turn the situation around. The ancestors of the Four Symbols Alliance were already prepared for the destruction of the Four Symbols Alliance. Young Star-Lord, the reason why our Four Symbols Alliance is where it is today is all because of you. Our Four Symbols Alliance no longer has the power to deal with the martial soul lineage and the Righteous Alliance. We've already reached such a critical juncture. So are you still not going to do anything? Wu Lu called out. The young Star-Lord's attitude almost made Wu Lu lose his patience. He was no longer as polite to the young Star-Lord as before. Humph! What's the hurry? Am I not here? Isn't the final moment not here yet? The young Star-Lord frowned and said rather impatiently, You can only blame yourself. I told you before to draw Genshin down. As long as Genshin comes out, everything will be resolved. In the end, so many of you went out, and one of you died in the end, but you still didn't manage to lure Genshin out. Who can you blame? The Four Symbols Alliance had already made arrangements for their retreat. They began to select talented juniors to send out of the Cloud Plain. In the crowd, the two great elders of the Four Symbols Alliance sighed inside when they saw this. They took out their communication jade slips and began to communicate with each other in an obscure manner. The two old men were both chaotic primes. They were the two ancestral emperors who had survived the various battles against the Righteous Alliance after the Blood Sun Empire had become a part of the Four Symbols Alliance. At the same time, the Blood Emperor stood at the top of the imperial palace of the Blood Sun Empire in his dragon robes. He gazed in the direction of the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance as he was extremely stern. He was filled with worry. Although the Blood Sun Empire still belonged to the Four Symbols Alliance, the Righteous Alliance did not treat them seriously at all. This was because even though the Blood Sun Empire was the eternal empire that controlled the southern region on the surface, they were only a slightly plump grasshopper in the eyes of the three-peaked clans of the Righteous Alliance. This was because the Blood Sun Empire did not suffer from the attack on the headquarters of the Four Symbols Alliance this time. Suddenly, the Blood Emperor's face changed. With a flip of his hand, a jade slip suddenly appeared. The Blood Emperor's expression changed rapidly as he looked at the jade slip in his hand. At that instant, he seemed to have aged a lot, and he gave off a dispirited aura. The Ancestral Emperor actually wants me to activate the Bloodline plan. Is the Four Symbols Alliance really unable to last? Is our Blood Sun Empire really going to be destroyed? The Blood Emperor seemed to lose all his strength. He sat down on the ground as his eyes became dazed. But very soon he stood up as he trembled. He gathered the people of the Imperial clan in a majestic hall. Very soon, over 100 people gathered there. They did not seem to be very old. They were all of the Dragon's Son. As an eternal empire that had existed for 1,000,000 years, the Imperial clan of the Blood Sun Empire had several tens of thousands of people at the very least. However, there were only around 100 people who could be summoned by the Blood Emperor. This was more than enough to demonstrate just how great the statuses of the people who had the right to stand there were. In the majestic hall, over 100 dragons' grandsons knelt down politely and paid their respects to the Blood Emperor. They were all uneasy, and their faces were filled with unease. Now, everyone knew that the Righteous Alliance was attacking the Four Symbols Alliance. The Four Symbols Alliance was in a dire situation. They had lost quite a few Grand Primes. The success or failure of the Four Symbols Alliance directly affected the fate of their Blood Sun Empire. As a result, the Dragon's Grandsons and Dragon's Grandsons who possessed extremely great statuses in the Blood Sun Empire spent their days in fear. It was not an exaggeration to say that every day felt like a year. To no surprise, the 9th prince who had almost destroyed the Tianyuan family was among them as well. However, The ninth prince was no longer as arrogant and high-spirited as he was in the past. The Four Symbols Alliance can't last much longer. The Ancestral Emperor has ordered the execution of the Bloodline Plan. You are the future of our Blood Sun Empire. If the Blood Sun Empire is destroyed, you will be able to rise up again one day in the future, allowing our Blood Sun Empire to reappear. The Blood Emperor was extremely dispirited, as if he had used all of his strength to say that. Afterwards, he looked at the ninth prince and said, "The Blood Sun Empire will probably vanish as well. There's no need to worry about the agreement with the Shi dynasty. You can leave as well. I hope you don't disappoint me." "Thank you for your grace, Father." The ninth prince was overjoyed when he heard that. He was overjoyed. I don't care about the others, but the ninth prince must remain. Otherwise, none of you will be able to leave. At this moment, a dignified voice rang out from nowhere. A figure appeared out of nowhere in the majestic hall. It was a middle-aged man. He also wore dragon robes and possessed a dignified bearing. He possessed the unquestionable bearing of a superior. He did not stand on the ground. Instead, he hovered in the air. He was even taller than the Blood Emperor, who sat on the throne. He looked down on the Blood Emperor as if he was looking down on him. The appearance of this person caused the Blood Emperor's expression to change. It was extremely sunken, and there was also a deep sense of powerlessness. The Blood Emperor sucked in a deep breath and said with a deep voice, "Emperor Shi, I never thought that you would come personally." He was the emperor of the Shi dynasty, Shiziyun. Chapter 2681. Looking at the emperor of the Shi dynasty, who had suddenly appeared in the throne room, all the dragon's grandsons gathered there felt both fear and anger. They also felt a sense of grievance. The Blood Sun Empire and the Shi dynasty were both eternal empires on the cloud plane. They each ruled over a region, and both of them were equally matched in terms of status and strength. They had never interfered with each other. However, as the current emperor of the Shi dynasty in the northern region, Emperor Shi had actually come uninvited, directly appearing in the most sacred throne room of the Blood Sun Empire. He wanted to cut off the Blood Sun Empire's path of retreat as soon as he spoke. This was no longer as simple as a provocation. As a matter of fact, in the eyes of some of the dragon's grandsons, this was an insult to the Blood Sun Empire. As an eternal empire that reigned over the southern region, they had actually fallen to such a state. They felt powerless before the Shi dynasty's undisguised threat. Not only did this make the dragon's grandsons feel sorrowful, but even the Blood Emperor felt extremely aggrieved. Emperor Shi, the Righteous Alliance, is currently at war with the Four Symbols Alliance. As a member of the Righteous Alliance, not only has your Shi dynasty not assisted the Righteous Alliance, but you even have the leisure to come to our Blood Sun Empire and interfere with these trivial matters. Your Shi dynasty sure has a lot of free time, the Blood Emperor said emotionlessly. He was extremely stern. The battle in 10,000 years will affect you, heart. This is no small matter. Emperor Shi waved his hand, and a throne immediately appeared out of nowhere. He sat on the throne, over 30 meters above the ground. Who knew whether he had done it intentionally or not? But he was always a head taller than the Blood Emperor. As for the war between the Righteous Alliance and the Four Symbols Alliance, there's no need for our Shi dynasty to interfere. The orders from the Righteous Alliance to our Shi dynasty are only for our Shi dynasty to protect the northern region. Emperor Shi spoke extremely indifferently as he looked at the Blood Emperor from above. Even though he was the same as the Blood Emperor in terms of status, they were both emperors of eternal empires. However, in terms of strength, Emperor Shi was a chaotic prime, while the Blood Emperor was only an infinite prime. Moreover, he was an early infinite prime. As a result, there was always a gap between their statuses. The Blood Emperor fell silent. The war between the two alliances basically involved all the major organizations on the cloud plane, let alone the two ancestral emperors of the Blood Sun Empire of the southern region. Even the eternal empires of the eastern and western regions had mobilized all their chaotic primes. Only the northern region had not sent a single soldier. The Blood Emperor knew exactly what this meant. This didn't mean that the Shi dynasty wasn't valued by the Alliance of Justice and Order. On the contrary, the Alliance of Justice and Order was protecting the Shi dynasty by not allowing the Shi dynasty to participate in the war, which meant that the Shi dynasty wouldn't suffer any losses. It was obvious that the Alliance of Justice and Order was taking special care of the Shi dynasty because of the Tianyuan family. The ninth prince of the Blood Sun Empire's excitement and joy from before had vanished completely. His face was ashen and filled with despair. He knew that since Emperor Shi had appeared, it was impossible for him to leave the Cloud Plain. His fate was to live out the next 10,000 years and then fight the princess of the Shi dynasty. He even knew that he would definitely lose the battle 10,000 years later. He had no chance at victory at all. Even if he broke through and reached the primordial realm, even if he possessed the strength to crush the princess of the Shi dynasty, he would still be the one to die in the end. Why? Why did I provoke the Tianyuan family? Didn't Jianqin want the Flower of Ways? I could have just given it to him. But why did I have to take revenge on the Tianyuan family? Taking revenge on the Tianyuan family is one thing, but why did I have to kill off the Tianyuan family? If I didn't kill off the Tianyuan family, I wouldn't have offended the princess of the Shi dynasty, and I wouldn't have ended up like this today. The ninth prince was filled with regret. At that moment, he wished he could turn back time so much that he could start all over again. In the end, the Blood Emperor compromised. He left the ninth prince behind according to Emperor Shi's request. With the four symbols alliance weakened, the Blood Sun Empire no longer had the confidence to stand up to the Shi dynasty. It was also at this moment that a teleportation formation that was rarely used in a huge city on the central region of the Cloud Plain suddenly shone with dazzling light. The powerful power of teleportation surged, attracting countless people in the surroundings in a single instance. It's a teleportation formation that can cross planes. It's said that this teleportation formation can only be activated with colored divine crystals. That's something that only primordial realm experts possess. The teleportation formation has been activated. It looks like someone else has come from another plane. It must be some important figure. It's extremely likely that it's a primordial realm expert. Everyone move aside. Don't block the senior's path. At that moment, the cultivators in the surroundings all discussed. All of their eyes widened as they stared at the teleportation formation. They were filled with great curiosity. A few breaths later, along with a strong spatial fluctuation, the dazzling light from the teleportation array gradually faded away, revealing the four figures standing in the teleportation array. The person at the front was a young man. He wore luxurious white robes and possessed an imposing bearing. His face was filled with undisguised arrogance. The other three people were two middle-aged men and a skinny old man. Compared to the white-robed young man's sharp appearance, the three of them were much more ordinary. Their presences were concealed, making them seem like ordinary people. However, no one would truly believe that they were ordinary people since they could use a teleportation formation to cross planes. Cloud Plain, I've finally come. Jianqin, do you think you can relax just by hiding on the Cloud Plain? The method of the exalted saint belongs to me. This time, I will definitely take back the method of the exalted saint and complete the cultivation method. The white-robed young man, standing in front, looked at the world and murmured in a low voice. The white-robed young man was the current leader of the Radiant Saint Hall on the desolate plain, Gongsun. As for the three people behind Gongsun-ji, they all looked in the direction of the southern region as soon as they set foot on the Cloud Plain. A gleam of light flashed through their eyes. This beam of light was like a bolt of lightning. It possessed an intimidating might. Even space rippled slightly as far as the eye could see. Just their gazes possessed such unfathomable power. It was difficult to imagine just how terrifying these three ordinary-looking people were. You, come here. Gongsun Ji pointed at a cultivator nearby and asked coldly, Tell me, where is the Tianyuan family founded by Jianqin? The cultivator Gongsun Ji pointed at was only a deity. His face was pale white and filled with unease. He arrived before Gongsun Ji as he trembled slightly. He was about to speak. Leader, there's no need to ask. We already know where Jianqin is. A middle-aged man behind Gongsun Ji said. A middle-aged man behind Gongsun Ji said. The light in his eyes flickered as he stared in the direction of the southern region. He said slowly, we've come at the perfect time. An interesting show is currently unfolding on the cloud plain. Not only have we found Jianchen, but even the other members of the martial soul lineage are here. What? The martial soul lineage is here as well? Hearing this, Gongsun Ji was first shocked, then overjoyed, a strong fighting spirit burning in his chest. Although he was still a god king right now, Gongsun Ji was in high spirits after wielding the greatest protector sword, Godslayer's sword. He basically did not take the martial soul lineage seriously at all. Chapter 2682. Ha 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 ha, martial soul lineage. I was just fretting over how to find you. Yet you're all on the cloud plane. That's fantastic. It looks like even the heavens are helping me. Jianqin laughed out loud. Martial soul lineage. I was just worrying about how to find you. Yet you're all on the cloud plane. Gongsun Ji laughed at the sky as if he was running out of patience. He immediately urged the three people behind him. Quick, quick, quick. Let's go. We can't let him escape. Not only will I kill the spy this time and take back the method of the exalted saint, but I'll also destroy the martial soul lineage. Although he already knew that Jianqin and the martial soul lineage were on the cloud plane, Gongsun Ji was only a divine king. Both the senses and senses of his soul were extremely limited. It was impossible for him to peer into the southern region from the central region of the cloud plane. This was basically something that only grand primes and a few extremely powerful chaotic primes could achieve. Don't worry, leader. The martial soul lineage is currently engaged in a fierce battle with a large organization on the cloud plane. They won't be leaving any time soon. The gray-robed old man behind Gongsun Ji said. With that, he waved his hand, and an invisible energy immediately wrapped around Gongsun Ji. Afterwards, the two of them vanished. The two middle-aged men who had come with Gongsun Ji stared in the direction of the southern region. Their deep gazes seemed to be able to pierce through space, allowing them to clearly see the battle happening there. Gongsun Ji is dreaming if he wants to destroy the martial soul lineage. The martial soul lineage isn't that easy to destroy, one of the middle-aged men said indifferently. He was called Su Jiping. He was the ancestor of a renowned peak clan on the desolate plain, the Su family. Although the martial soul lineage has been destroyed before, the people who did it were basically all ninth heavenly layer grand primes. Gongsun Ji is just too young after all. His understanding of the martial soul lineage is nowhere near as deep. It's wishful thinking for him to destroy the martial soul lineage. However, he does pose some threat to the martial soul lineage with his Godslayer's sword, said another middle-aged man as well. He seemed to be at ease. His name was Huang Fugi, and he was the grand elder of the Zhongtian clan, one of the top clans in the Barren State. Whether it was the Su family or the Zhongtian clan, there were both existences that stood at the very apex of the desolate plain. Before the protector swords of the Radiant Saint Hall appeared, the two clans were definitely stronger than the Radiant Saint Hall. As a matter of fact, it could even be said that the Su family and the Zhongtian clan were terrifying existences only second to the celestial sword saint on the desolate plain. Fortunately, the successors of the protector swords in the Radiant Saint Hall are not united. Otherwise, Gongsun Ji wouldn't be the only one among the 6 protectors. However, this is not necessarily a bad thing for us, said Huang Fugi. The ancestor of the Su family, Su Jiping, nodded. He said, Sir Gi, we should go over as well. If we go too late and make Gongsun Ji unhappy, what if he suddenly goes back on his word and doesn't go back on his promise to give the 3 remaining protector swords to the juniors of our clan after the Tower of Radiance accepts him? Wouldn't that be a huge loss for us? Yeah. Before we obtain the spot for the protector swords, Let's try our best not to make Gongsun Ji change his mind. Even though he acts like a petty person, he's the only successor of the Tower of Radiance after all. In order to get a spot for the juniors of my clan, I'll have to bear with it for a while, said Huang Fugi. With that, he and Su Jiping suddenly vanished. Deafening booms constantly rang out in the southern region of the Cloud Plain. Terrifying energy surged through the surroundings. Every single attack from Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji was devastating, causing the protective formation of the Four Symbols Alliance to erupt with dazzling light. The entire screen of light shook constantly. At this moment, this place had long been destroyed beyond recognition. There was a huge crater, and all the nearby mountains had been razed to the ground. I can already sense that the protective formation of the Four Symbols Alliance is weakening. It looks like they can't last much longer, Zhou Zhidao called out as excitement and eagerness filled his eyes. This was because he knew that once the protective formation of the Four Symbols Alliance was destroyed, the Four Symbols Alliance would be completely destroyed. There would only be the Righteous Alliance left on the Cloud Plain. Their attacks are too powerful. The energy consumption of the formation has far exceeded our expectations. We can't last much longer, Gong Ji said sternly within the Four Symbols Alliance. There's no hurry. I'll take action the moment the formation breaks, the young Star Lord said emotionlessly. Viciousness filled his eyes. With his words, the originally uneasy people of the Four Symbols Alliance calmed down slightly. The young Star Lord had basically become the pillar of support for everyone in the Four Symbols Alliance. I hope the young Star Lord can really turn the situation around and turn our defeat into victory, many people in the Four Symbols Alliance prayed inside. At this moment, two figures appeared silently behind the Righteous Alliance. They were Gongsun Ji and the gray-robed, skinny old man. As soon as Gongsun Ji arrived, he was surprised by the terrifying energy in the surroundings. His face changed slightly. He had never seen such tremendous energy on such an intense battlefield. What's happened here? Gongsun Ji thought. Very soon, he calmed down and looked around. He directly glanced past the Four Symbols Alliance and the Righteous Alliance before stopping on the illusionary Martial Soul Mountain that hovered in outer space. At the same time, Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji sensed Gongsun Ji's arrival. The three of them subconsciously stopped their attacks and looked at the skinny old man. Their faces changed slightly. Third Heavenly Layer Grand Prime. Tong Wuming, Zhou Zhidao, and Lian Wuji looked at each other. They were rather stern. They could already tell the old man's strength. He was actually on the same level as the Lord of the Heavens Link Peak. It's actually Sha Yin from the Divine Blade sect. Han Zong, Chu Jian, and Yu Chao discovered Gongsun Ji's arrival as soon as possible in outer space. They also looked at the old man and frowned. At this moment, Su Jiping and Huang Fugi appeared silently as well. They stood beside the skinny old man, Sha Yun. Han Zong, Chu Jian, and Yu Chao all became stern with their appearance. Su Jiping of the Su family and Huang Fugi of the Mid-Heaven clan have actually come as well. This time, Han Zhang's voice became rather stern. Su Jiping and Huang Fugi's arrival pressured them even more than Sha Yan's. Jianqin looked over as well when he heard that. He did not recognize Sha Yin, Huang Fugi, or Su Jiping, but he saw Gongsun Ji with a single glance. He knew that the situation was bad. Ha ha ha, Jianqin, I finally found you. And the martial soul lineage as well. I'll make it so you won't be able to escape this time. Gongsun Ji bellowed out from below. Immediately, extremely bright light erupted from his body. It was dazzling like the sun, illuminating the surroundings.